to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends, Ryan McIntyre, who does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. We've got a lot of Big 12 games that are going to be coming up for Tuesday. We'll preview those. We'll take a look at the landscape of the Big 12. Have to get his thoughts on a lot of the top teams in the sport going down as well. So we've got ourselves a fun time coming with him in segment number 2. In the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Tuesday as we hit some bank shots. And here in segment number 1, we're going to recap what we saw on a pretty lively Monday in college basketball. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, we had ourselves a fun day of college basketball on Monday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
We had no ranked teams in action, but we did have a matchup out there in the Big East. Marquette, they don't cover, but they got a win that they horribly needed. They're now, I believe, 7-13 on the year. 105-104 in overtime. Marquette gets the job done. They go 8-23 from 3, which is much better than what they've been all season. Nigel James was the guy that stepped up. 38 points, 4 of 6 from 3-point range, and for Marquette, they dominated the turnover battle. 17-6. They got dominated on the boards. They lose that battle 42-30, and Marquette wins this game despite going 19 of 30 at the free throw line, mainly because Providence couldn't hold on to the ball. Oswin, can't pronounce the last name, had 15 rebounds in this game, and Stefan Vox was able to supply 26 points, but not a great performance here from Providence. They were down 10 at the half. They tried to claw their way back a little bit too little, a little bit too late, and with Marquette with a non-cover, now 4-15-1 against the spread thus far this season. That's not great. Your next worst against the spread team that was in action, well, actually you're worse against the spread team because they're now 2-12 against the spread. Texas Southern, they go down once again. Jackson State was able to find a way late to be able to get the cover in this game as Jackson State, they're able to get the job done in a high-scoring expose by kind of 94-89. And for Texas Southern, they were able to go 8-28 from 3-point range, but Jackson State seems to be figuring it out. Now 4-1 in the SWAC, 8-21 from 3-point range. Dorian McMillan, 25 big points. Deshaun Ruffin, formerly of Ole Miss, 16 assists to 3 turnovers in this game. Jackson State wins the turnover battle 11-10. They do lose a rebound battle 37-32, but again, with the Texas Southern team really not being able to shoot it well from 3-point range, that was a good elixir there for Ryder. They're now 4-10-3 against the spread as they had yet another non-cover on Monday, 105-85. Sacred Heart absolutely pounds them. Ryder finally put some points upon the board. They went 8-21 from 3-point range, but the defense, despicable. 15 of 27 is what Sacred Heart was able to shoot from 3-point range. Deshaun Gittins, well, he was getting that good, 25 points. He goes 4 of 5 from 3. And Quan Hill, 26 points. He was able to supply 6 rebounds. And then Makai Connor, 13 assists to 2 turnovers. Ryder playing the Ole style of defense, so that was a lot of clean fun. And we had a lot of fun out there in the Ivy League as well, as you had Cornell be able to take it to Brown, 89-67, the final. A rare under for Cornell, but that's because the defense actually stepped up. Brown has not been a good offensive team, by the way, outside the top 10 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis at home. For Brown, they lose the rebound battle 34-29, and they allow Cornell to go 12 of 29 from 3-point range. Jake Feigen, 31 points. Cooper Norhead was able to slide 20, so that was a good win for Cornell. And if you're just taking a look at these Ivy League teams, you've had some really interesting against the spread teams, to say the least, with Penn actually being your leader in the clubhouse right now at 11-5 against the spread. Your worst team is actually Cornell, who covered that game, now 5-10 against the spread. And for Penn, they don't get the win, but they do get the cover against Harvard, 64-63, the final in a slug. As for Harvard, they've been one of the slowest teams in all of college basketball, and they go just 4 of 8 at the free throw line. That costed them a cover, but they did a nice job in terms of holding up down low. As for Penn, they go 6 of 19 from 3, but they only shoot 41% overall from the floor. And Thomas Beatty's the third, and Tay Barber, they were both able to supply 17 points apiece for Harvard. If you're looking at Princeton, they're now 11-7 against the spread, despite the fact that they're just not having a great year. They're 11-7 against the spread, but did not cover against Dartmouth. Dartmouth as a 1.5 point favorite in a lot of spots, 71-69. They're able to take down Princeton in this one. It was nip and tuck late. Princeton was up 7 points at the half, let go of the lead. Brandon Mitchell-Day, only 5 points, but 14 rebounds, and you had Kareem Thomas be able to hit a shot with like 2 or so seconds remaining to be able to get the job done for Dartmouth. So Dartmouth able to get a nice quality win there, and in a lot of places, Princeton actually closes at more like 1 or so point favorite. So that was a pretty quality performance out there. If you're looking at the Metro Atlantic, I already mentioned Ryder and the fact that things have not been great for them. St. Peter's, though, how about the fact that they have been able to cover a lot of spreads? They're now 10-5-1 against the spread, and for the Peacocks, they were able to get some nice, clean domination on Monday. As for St. Peter's, they take it to Iona, 77-63. The final. St. Peter's, one of the best teams that's generating turnovers in all of college basketball, didn't do so on this day. They actually lost the turnover battle 13-9, but for Iona, 11 of 32 from three-point range, 12 of 22 at the free throw line, and they lost a rebound battle 44-31. As for the Peacocks, whole was greater than the sum of its parts, as you had nobody score above 13 points. So Kai Williamson was your top scorer, but 6 different guys were able to supply the team with at least 10 points. Marist is now 9-6-1 against the spread, but Merrimack is actually the team that right now leads the conference, and they fell to Merrimack outright on the money line. As Merrimack in a slug, that's a lot of what you could expect from Merrimack games. They win 68-55 with Ernest Shelton stepping up for 18 points. Marist 2 of 16 from three-point range. Defense was good enough to be able to hold in there, but the offense was unable to do anything whatsoever, so that was a little bit of an issue for them. By the way, Niagara now 5-12 against the spread, as they had a lead at the half and then they just completely blew it, as they took yet another loss on Monday for Niagara. They fall on their home floor to Mount St. Mary's 68-58, the final. And for Niagara, a team that's supposed to be built around jump shooting, they shot 34% from the floor, and they actually won the rebound battle 39-36, but lost the turnover battle 13-10. So good, clean family fun out there against a Mount St. Mary's team that's been absolutely awful on the turnover front. Out there in the Coastal Conference, we had a few teams in action on Monday out there as well, and Pride of Foster right now, your top cover team out there in the Coastal. They're 12-5 against the spread. Towson has been a little bit disappointing at 8-10 against the spread. 1 point winners against Drexel, no cover, but they were able to avoid yet another bad loss, and currently doing this as North Carolina, A&T, and Hampton are doing battle. And for Hampton, they are currently in the lead. They should be able to get the cover here against North Carolina. A&T do have to have this up by midnight Pacific, 3 o'clock a.m. Eastern, but going into this game, you had a North Carolina A&T bunch that was 9-5 against the spread, so doing a pretty rock-solid job out there. And then Monmouth, earlier on in the day, 81-68, they were able to take it to Northeastern. For Monmouth, it's been a little bit up-down all around for them, but they go 10 of 27 from 3, and for Northeastern, just 4 of 24 from three-point range in this game. It's a Northeastern team that does find themselves 9-9 against the spread, so haven't necessarily been completely terrible there, but certainly have been leaving a little bit of something to be desired. Also had some nice America East and NEC action as well, and right now in the America East, really the lone team that's been able to cover numbers this year has been New Hampshire. They're 11-6 against the spread. NJIT is 11-8 against the spread as well. Everyone else is 500 or worse against the spread, and for New Hampshire, they absolutely lay it on a Maine team that's just been getting mained this year. One of the worst offenses that you're going to find in all of college basketball. They've been really good to the under, and they played yet another under for you, 65-48. New Hampshire able to get the job done in that one. Vermont, the perennial power in this conference, by the way, they fall to Albany, 75-68, the final in that one. Amir Lindsay, 24 points for Albany, so they were able to do a rock solid job. If you're looking out there in the NEC, Chicago State, well, they have not been a great cover team thus far this season. That should come as a shock to absolutely nobody whatsoever. Of 6 points with about 2 minutes and 35 seconds against New Haven remaining, and they lose by a count of 62-56 for Chicago State, now 7-10-1 against the spread. And Lemoyne has actually been a really nice cover team, along with Mercyhurst. Mercyhurst 11-6 against the spread thus far this season. Lemoyne 12-6 against the spread, and as a home underdog, Lemoyne, they got the outright win, 83-77 against Long Island, thanks to going 9-16 from 3. Long Island, they looked like Strong Island from three-point range at 7-18 from 3. Not so strong at the free throw line, though. 6-12 at the free throw line, and when you lose by 6 points, Yeah, that's not great, to say the least. And then for Mercyhurst, they were able to get a nice winner themselves against Central Connecticut, 79-61. They were also home underdogs in this one. And for Mercyhurst, 9 of 17 from 3-point. Central Connecticut, who's actually been really good with their 3-point shooting, just 5 of 22 from the outside in this one. And for Mercyhurst, they were able to win that turnover battle by a count of 10-8. If you're looking trend-wise at some of the teams on Monday that are good to the over and the under, probably your most demonstrative team to the over was Providence. They played yet another over, so now they're up to 14 overs to 5 unders. And New Orleans, as we had some Southland action as well, they were able to do a pretty solid job on Monday as well. For New Orleans, they do find a way to get a win and cover and an over against Lamar, 89-76. The final is for New Orleans. They only go 1 of 6 from 3-point range, but that said, they did a nice job being able to hit their 2-point shots, 28 out of 48 on those. They go 30 out of 41 at the free throw line as well, and they've been a pretty rock solid team on the glass, 40-35. They won that rebound battle, did lose the turnover battle, 13-11, but they find a way to persevere there. And I forgot, Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin is actually your best cover team that was in action on Monday, and Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin continues to be tremendous. How about 14-3 against the spread for them? They absolutely dump truck Nichols, 79-62 the final. They were up 45-24 at the half. I think that they got up like 24-5 or something like that for the Stephen F. Austin team. They're not generating turnovers anymore. They actually lose the turnover battle 13-10, but they're just really good in general with their defense, with Jared Colonel being able to give you blocks. He had 8 points, 8 rebounds in this one. Krishan Christmas always feels like Christmas when he's out there. 14 rebounds out of him. So Stephen F. Austin, they net you an under, and they get the job done out there. So that was a nice quality winner for them. And then in terms of a great under team that was in action on Monday, how about what these guys have been able to do? As right now you've got New Haven at 5 overs to 11 unders. Mentioned the fact that they got the job done against Chicago State. Howard was playing a non-D1 team, so that does not count. It probably would have been an overwhelming game that they played against Morehouse, but they've been 5 overs to 11 unders, and they actually got a scare for Morehouse in that game. Ryder is now up to 5 overs to 12 unders, so they have been a really good under team themselves. I mentioned Maine, 6 overs to 13 unders for them thus far this season. Towson with another under on Monday. They're up to 6 overs and 12 unders as well, so we did have quite a few underwhelming teams. And then you've got Iona and Siena both out there in the Metro Atlantic at 7 overs to 13 unders. Also out there in the Metro Atlantic, Merrimack, 7 overs to 13 unders. But for Siena, a team that I have yet to hit upon, they were able to find a way on Monday to be able to get the job done against Fairfield on a lot of numbers, 85-77 the final. This all depended upon your closing line, but a lot of places had this at like 6.5 points. Now they did play an over because he had a lot of points up on the board for Fairfield. They go just 8 of 26 from 3-point range, but they do a good job inside. They lost the rebound battle by a count of 25-20. As for Siena, 7 of 14 from 3. They shoot 67% from the floor. Siena loses the turnover battle 13-9, but in the possessions that they had, they did a great job in terms of making the most of them. Gavin Doty, 24 big points in this one, so that was huge for them. And if you're taking a look at trend-wise, what we're getting in college basketball right now, over the last 7 days, things have been very overwhelming. Overall for the season, the over has taken the lead on unders, 1,571 overs to 1,564 unders, and underdogs are barking at about 51.2%, 1,604 and 1,530 against the spread. Meanwhile, if you look at the last 7 days in college basketball, underdogs hitting at darn near 56%, 187 and 148 against the spread, and the over rate is right around about 52.5%, 176 overs, 159 unders, and a few pushes along the way. So that's where we're seeing college basketball right now, and that's where we're all getting trend-wise. Coming up next, how about if we do chat it up with our good friend Ryan McIntyre of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network right here on Coast to Coast with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Recent Family Podcast. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here, lovely Las Vegas, for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man, as we've got Ryan McIntyre aboard. He does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast, and we're looking at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. I know that he's dialed in on a little bit of everything in terms of college basketball. Just got done with what was a tremendous college football season, as well as he and Kobe Dant over there at the College Experience on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. They do a great job on that front and so much more. And you're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at Moneyline_Max, spelled MAC. And Ryan, always great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Always appreciate you having me. Let's talk some college hoops.
Absolutely. And Ryan, it's been a wild first 3 or so weeks of conference play that we've seen thus far. And what have been your main takeaways? Because it feels like the teams that we thought were high and mighty, well, they have not been so high and not been so mighty here recently.
I think finally teams are hitting the wall a little bit. Outside of Arizona, Arizona just doesn't hit a wall, it looks like, and Nebraska and Miami of Ohio. Those three teams just continue to win, hence why they're still undefeated. But yeah, Michigan coming back to the pack a little bit, dropping that game to Wisconsin at home, failing to cover both games out west. Also, I think you look at Purdue. Purdue hasn't covered in like 4 or 5 games. Vanderbilt finally dropped a couple games. Just some of these other teams are hitting the wall a little bit. Iowa State as well went 0-2 last week. I mean, that's going to happen in college basketball. I always say you're going to at one point lose 3 out of 4 or 3 out of 5 games. You just got to get through it, keep getting better so that you're good once you get to March.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I sort of take a look at it the same way I look at baseball, where you want to start out, maybe experience a little bit of a cold run in like January, February, midseason, but you want to be excelling and you want to be playing your best basketball towards back half of the season. So I do agree with you there, and it does feel like the Big 12 is just set up to be an amazing conference, and we've got ourselves a lot of good Big 12 games to be looking at on Tuesday. And how do you take a look at this conference? Because I think it's hard to dispute Arizona being that top team, even though they got a little bit of a test against Arizona State. I would say that what they were able to do to be able to atone for that, the way that they took down TCU and just so many other wins, have them up top. But again, I know that you talked about this a few weeks ago, but that said, with this Houston team, feels like they're starting to be able to figure it out. Even though Iowa State loses back-to-back games, they still look rock solid. And don't look now, but it feels like Kansas is starting to figure it out too.
I was getting ready to say, I think that top tier, like you got to put Arizona 1. They've beaten who's who. I mean, they've beaten everybody. They've won on the road. Obviously, they win in Tucson. I think Houston, by default, is going to have the number 2 spot, just what they've been over the last couple of years. And they always do this where they drop a game or 2 in November, then they really tighten things up and get better defensively. And then I think BYU and Texas Tech and Iowa State are kind of just in that next tier, just really solid group. But you can make the argument maybe Kansas has the highest upside of any of them if they can keep Peterson. I know you're a big fan because of his last name.
Yes, sir.
On the floor. They were able to prove that they can win without him, whether it was Council going off in multiple games, Flory, the big fella down there. And I just think that maybe long term, the best thing that ever happened was Peterson not playing those games where the other guys figured out, accept their roles and were put in situations that they never would have been put in. Because Peterson, I mean, all he does is score the ball. It feels like he's just a walking 30-point game. I haven't really seen anything like it at the college level since maybe Kyrie Irving when he only played the 10 games. But the game just comes so easy to him. So, like you said, Kansas and those top 5 teams can all get to a Final Four and win it all. And then I think the middle of the pack is kind of playing well. As my Mountaineers are playing better basketball, doing well at home under Ross Hodge. UCF, their size and their experience, Oklahoma State as well. You got to think that Baylor and TCU will find ways to win games just with how good Scott Drew's been over his career and Jamie Dixon over there in Fort Worth.
Peterson being a walking bucket. That's something that we know all too well about in my household. So absolutely. Now Kansas fans get to know what that experience is like. But man, it has been incredible what we've been seeing out of Kansas ever since they've gotten Peterson back. And it's going to be a very fascinating game to see what we get on Tuesday, because it does feel like that sort of bottom/middle of the Big 12 with these teams like Colorado, Central Florida, Oklahoma State. I feel like most of them have exceeded expectations. Now Kansas has to go to Boulder as 4.5 to 5.5 point favorites. That totals 156.5. Want to get your thoughts here because I think that Kansas is going to be able to escape with the win. I don't know if they quite cover, but with this Kansas bunch, you talk about Peterson and the way that he's able to score. I think the biggest forte for this Kansas team is honestly their defense and how locked down they've been.
Greg, I would also say that if you're a Colorado or you're a, let's say, Kansas State, it's not looking good right now, or Utah as well. You've missed some opportunities, but the thing about the Big 12 is it just keeps presenting opportunity after opportunity after opportunity where you can get a quality win. So, Colorado in the late slate, an opportunity to bolt up their resume. I think Colorado's going to play well. That's a tough place to play. Kansas has struggled there historically. I'm going to take the points with Colorado getting the 5.5.
Yeah, with Colorado, they just have such a great home court environment. They always seem to play a little bit better at home, and they've been doing a pretty solid job in terms of taking care of the ball as well as Ryan McIntyre, who does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. He's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Soups, and then I think that this is another fun one because I'm not sure how you've been taking a look at college basketball, but I feel like TCU is one of the most volatile teams in the country.
Yeah.
Very nearly knock off Michigan, lose at home to New Orleans. They lose that game to Utah after a very spirited effort on the road against BYU. Now they return home against Oklahoma State as about an 8.5-point favorite. Want to get your thoughts here because I feel like with TCU, the range of outcomes is about as wide as it gets, which is very strange because they're a team built on defense.
I'm going to lay with TCU. Historically, they've just been so good under Jamie Dixon at home. Their one loss at home this year was to Michigan and Arizona. So, I mean, those are two of the top 5 teams in the country, and they gave them fits. So they've hit a little bit of a tough spell here, playing 3 out of 4 on the road, but I like them to bounce back, and I'll fade Oklahoma State off that crazy win in K-State, Oklahoma State Saturday night in that late window.
Oh, and you mentioned Kansas State. They're 8.5-point favorites at home against Utah. I need to get your thoughts here on Kansas State because, man, it just feels like the volatility with this team is so extreme because they take so many threes. They're a team that has had a tough time taking care of the ball, but the good news for them is that Utah has been playing the Ole style of defense all season long.
It kind of feels like a K-State smash spot, I think. Like you said, they're such a high variance team with how many threes that they take from the perimeter, and same with Utah. I don't like Utah away from Salt Lake City. They're off a huge win against TCU on Saturday. I think I'll fade the Utes here and I'll lay with the K-State Wildcats.
Yeah, with Kansas State, PJ Haggerty, you know what you're going to be able to get out of him. With Utah, a little bit more suspect with the rest of those guys. As Ryan McIntyre does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, joining me on Coast to Coast Soups, and I think that would be very shocking if Iowa State does not get back on track with an outright win against Central Florida, but the 13.5-point spread I think is a little bit more dicey. That totals 156.5. I do want to get your thoughts here against a Central Florida team that has been surprisingly good this far this season, but I do feel like with Iowa State, this team is going to get back to their roots, and the roots for Iowa State, as we both know, is playing good lockdown defense, which I feel like has been eluding them in this little bit of a rough patch.
It really has. I think UCF, wrong place, wrong time tomorrow. You're getting Iowa State off back-to-back losses, but now they're back at home where they just choke teams out defensively with those 2 guards and the ball pressure. I like Iowa State to win by 20. I think that they get back to that defensive side of the basketball and they roll.
Yep, I'm right there with you, and I do think that it's going to be really interesting to see what we get moving forward out of the Big 12, and certainly I know that you were talking about Houston a little bit before, along with Kansas, and when it comes to that mid-tier pack of teams, how do you take a look at a team like a Baylor, who's going to be in action on Tuesday? I think that they're one of the most fascinating teams in this conference because we all thought that when they signed James Nanji that he was going to make an impact. That has not been the case at all, and it just feels like that misfit team right now that sort of is falling behind while these teams like TCU, these teams like Central Florida are ascending.
Yeah, it really has. I think that that may have messed up their locker room bringing in that guy.
He's not even playing.
He's terrible. He couldn't guard a ball screen to save his life the other night. I feel like Flory from Kansas is still dunking on him. He's not even good enough to get on the floor. So a lot of headlines, a lot of head scratching, unnecessary attention, in my opinion, bringing over that guy. Now or never. They need to get that Texas Tech game. So I do like them. With that said, Scott Drew versus his former assistant. I'll take the home dog there.
That is going to be a really fun one, and I do think that we've got ourselves a lot of fun to be taking a look at with regards to the Big 12, but how do you take a look at the rest of the card for Tuesday? Because on Tuesday, we don't necessarily get the biggest slates, but we get ourselves a whole bunch of really good games. We're going to have some ACC action. Seton versus St. John's is a fun one for me as well. You get some nice SEC games. How do you take a look at this card where you don't necessarily have the most games to break down, but you've got a lot of big ones to break down?
Exactly, and I think that sums up Super Tuesday. Tuesday. It's quality over quantity. I'm actually going to be in the building for this game, the Maction game of the night. I like Kent State over Miami of Ohio. I think the Red Hawks finally get bit here. They crack into the top 25, a crazy win against Buffalo on Saturday. But Rob Senderoff and company, defensively rebounding the ball, they're always a pain. I think they're favored for a reason. I think that they're going to get it done, finally hand Miami of Ohio their first loss.
Now, this needs to be thrown out there as well. Rob Senderoff is buying the first 500 students that are 21 years or older, obviously, a free beer. They said that it was a Bud Light. I said that he would get Coach of the Year if he upgrades that to a Bud Light Platinum, because you have to go Platinum if you're going to go Bud Light. That is me personally. So, Rob Senderoff, please do get the message there. But that said, I do think that it's very wild what we're going to be seeing out there. And just how have you been taking a look at some of these mid-major teams? Because now Miami of Ohio is finally ranked. Now St. Louis, they're going to be in action. They're finally ranked as well, and we are starting to see some of these mid-majors being able to rise up, and you know that in their respective conferences, in the MAC for Miami of Ohio, out there in the Atlantic 10 for St. Louis, they are now going to be becoming the hunted.
Exactly, and I want to go on record. I'm going to say this on our show later tonight. If Miami of Ohio does drop the game to Kent State or St. Louis gets tripped up on the road, that doesn't mean that they should not have ever been ranked. Like, they earned the opportunity to be ranked by going 19-0. They have 8 wins away from Oxford. They've met every challenge, and it's not their fault that they brought back all that returning production from the 25-win team last year, and every high major was scared to schedule them because they didn't want to appear on the ticker lose in a bye game. So I'm a big advocate, and I defend the mid-majors to the nth degree because I think that they get a raw deal, A, with the portal where they have really good guys and they go off to the high major to get paid. But B, it's not like football where you see teams canceling the series and they pay out $800,000, $900,000 to these programs. These programs don't even get paid to not be on the schedule because of how good they are. So I think Miami of Ohio, like you said, they are going to get bit. This is college basketball. Nobody goes 40-0 except for the 77 Hoosiers. I think St. Louis will get bit again. We just saw Utah State get bit like Grand Canyon. I mean, it's hard to win on the road in college basketball. And for whatever reason, I think people forget that sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. And I do think that Miami of Ohio is having themselves a really good year. The one reason why I can't get behind Kent State is that their three-point shooting defense has been so bad this year. I wish, because I'm with you, I think Miami of Ohio is going to get bit. They're going to get bit soon. I just don't know if it's this game. But again, the free beer for those students, I think that is going to help out quite a bit. And is that something that you actually take into account? Because I know that Bellarmine did something very similar a few days ago, came out with actually a really spirited effort. I think that there's a lot of campuses out there that are trying to maximize that home court, and while a lot of people are going to sticker being like, hey, how do you have like free beers being a handicapping advantage or something like that, I think it actually means something.
It absolutely means something. It goes back to my original point of it's hard to win on the road in college basketball. It's hard to win on a raucous environment in college basketball. I think it takes teams 3, 4, 5 games to finally settle in on the road and figure out, because you're kind of in the foxhole, you can't hear, and you really got to lean on your stars on the road. So yeah, alcohol, we encourage that over at the college experience. So well done, Senderoff. And you want crazy students, you want crazy fans, well, let them pound some beers there. So well done by Kent State and Rob Senderoff.
Of course, in moderation, we will throw that in there, but absolutely, as long as it's being done right, I am right there with you. And Ryan, we've got ourselves a great slate on Tuesday. I know that you and Kobe are going to be breaking it down. You guys do an amazing job on that front, and I know you do a great job looking at West Virginia athletics on the Ryan and Rush show as well. So love to give people at home know what's on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Always appreciate you having me on, Greg. Yeah, go check us out at the college experience. Personally, I'm at Moneyline_Mac. Yeah, let's keep it going, Greg. 8 weeks till Selection Sunday.
Absolutely, and it's going to be a wild next few weeks before we get to Selection Sunday. Ryan is doing a great job looking at this great game of college basketball, and every single time he joins me, learn such great insights. So big thanks to Ryan for joining me on Cuz Heaps, part of the VC Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Tuesday as we hit some bank shots. Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Ryan McIntyre, who does such great work over at the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, looking at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights, and did so once again today. So big thanks to Ryan for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Tuesday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at gunit_81. We are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. Everything's on the normal Las Vegas betting board, so that means that there's no extra games. That means that it's pretty much in time order. So let's get things started. 601, 602 on the card. Toledo is on the road against UMass. The Minutemen are a 1 to 1.5 point favorite. 163.5 to 164 is the total. And I say UMass is a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 2 with them. They just have such a good rebounding advantage in this game. It's a UMass team that is a top 75 team in terms of rebound percentage. With Toledo, they have been a top 125 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. And this UMass team, not great at taking care of the ball. 13.8 turnovers per game. They're outside the top 290 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Fully recognize it in a tight spot. They also shoot about 67.4% at the free throw line. But being able to get those second and third chances and being a top 15 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, I don't think wins out. You've got Leonardo Batil, who's been able to give you 17 points, 7 boards, and then on top of that, Marcus Banks has really elevated this team with their three-point shooting as he shoots 38% from 3, 16 points per contest. Kajal Parker, he shoots 45% from three-point range, and typically you'd think that Toledo would be the better three-point shooting team. Not in this case, and UMass has been a top 25 team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Toledo is a team that very much loves to bomb it from 3, but they've had to taper back a little bit because you've got Leroy Blyden Jr. and Sonny Wilson, who have been solid three-point shooters. Blyden Jr. shoots 42% from 3, 15.5 points per contest. Wilson, 17.5 points. He shoots 38.5% from 3, but really outside that, you've got Kyler Vanderbilt, and that's about it. It's a team that only plays about a 6-man rotation. You have been able to have Sean Craig give you about 8 rebounds, 13 points per contest. Austin Parksell, though, about 5.5 rebounds per game, but with this team gambling for turnovers, it really leaves them vulnerable inside, outside the top 3 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Their 3-point shooting percentage defense is outside the top 240 in all of college basketball, and I'm anticipating a relatively mid-tempo game. Toledo not playing as fast as they have in the past, about 125th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. UMass looking to play with some tempo. They're 24th. I do think you get just enough possessions here for the over. I set my total at a 164.5. I do like the over, and in the end, I think that UMass wins with their rebounding. I'm willing to lay up to a deuce with them. 603, 604 on the card. Akron is on the road against Buffalo. Let's go Buffalo as a home underdog of 7.5 to 8.5 points. 169.5 to 170 is the total. I set my line at 7. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Buffalo. This has been a Buffalo unit that has actually been really good in terms of guarding the three-point line, and they don't allow a ton of second and third chances. Buffalo will not fight for offensive rebounds or anything like that, but it is a Buffalo team that ranks in the top 225 in terms of their defensive rebound percentage. You've got an Akron team that has been so good on offense, but they're right there with Buffalo. They're about 216th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage. It is an Akron team that allows quite a bit inside in a roadside-core venue. They do find themselves outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and the forte of this Akron team is the fact that they are just so good from 3. 6th in the country with their 3-point shooting percentage in a roadside-core venue that is still 38.7%, but Buffalo matches that. Buffalo shoots 39.3% from 3. That is number 10 in all of college basketball, and for this Buffalo team, they're going to find themselves in a little bit of a tempo war because it's an Akron team that's very much going to be looking to push tempo, while Buffalo is about 263rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. To be exact, Akron's about 59th in terms of total possessions per game, but for Buffalo, Daniel Freitag, one of the most underrated scorers in the country, 20.5 points, shoots 39.5% from 3, and then Angelo Parisi throws in there about 12 points, shoots 42% from 3. Ryan Sable, 41% three-point shooter, and all 3 of your top scorers shoot at least 81.9% at the free throw line. This team has done a great job taking care of the ball. Top 75 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and with both of these teams being really good perimeter offenses, you do have to take a look at that perimeter defense, and that is the edge that goes to Buffalo. Right now for Akron, they are 229th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Buffalo more around about 160th, I will say. Buffalo strangely allowing teams to shoot 39.5% from three-point range at home, 30% away from them. I think that irons out, but you do have Tavari Johnson, who gives you 20.5 points, shoots 38.5% from three for this Akron team. And for Akron, each of your top six scorers shoot at least 36.7% from three. Shema Scott shoots 44% from the outside, 13.5 points per contest. Armani Lyle, 7 boards, 15.5 points, shoots 43% from three. Akron does a great job taking care of the ball. Top 70 team, turns fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, but when it's all said and done, I do think that Buffalo is going to be able to hold in there. Akron also a top 5 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage. I do think that Buffalo slows this game down just a skoge. I set my total at a 169, so at 169.5, 170, I'm in on the under to go along with those points with Buffalo. 605, 606 on the card. Minnesota is on the road against Ohio State. The state with the small strengths in the union, Minnesota, is a 7.5 to an 8.5 point underdog total on this game. It is 144.5, and hopefully you always enjoy the Minnesota joke, but that's it with Ohio State. I did set them as a favorite at 12.5 points. I'm going to be one to lay it. Minnesota, year in and year out, just has some of the biggest home and road splits that you're going to find. It had happened once again this year. How about this Minnesota team? They are 15th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis at home, 357th in a road/score venue. You've got an Ohio State team that has excelled with regards to their interior offense, number 4 in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage at home. They're 33rd in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. I said Ohio State here as a 12.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. This Minnesota team is just not the same team away from home, and they really rely upon two main guys to be able to get it going. Cade Tyson, who's been great, 20.5 points, shoots 39% from 3-point range. Jalen Crocker Johnson, he's a little bit of a do-it-all gadget guy, 13.5 points, 7 boards. He shoots 35% from 3. Outside of that, nobody else on the roster shoots above 32% from 3. Bobby Durkin is taking a step back with his 3-point shooting. Langston Reynolds, Isaac Usama, they do a nice job doling it out, 8.5 assists per game, and Minnesota does a solid job taking care of the ball. Top 135 team, turns fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and they're going to be looking to play super duper slow here for Minnesota. Right now they're clocking in 335th of the country in terms of total possessions per game. Ohio State a mid-tempo team at about 206th, and for Ohio State you've got John Mobley along with Bruce Thornton in the backcourt. Thornton 20.5 points, 5.5 boards, shoots 43% from 3. Mobley shoots 41% from 3, and then Devin Royal is all of a sudden popped it from 3. He's shooting about 39.5% from 3. This is a spread where it's a very stray possibility that it might come down to late game fouling, and if it does, Ohio State they shoot 79.1% the free throw line. That's a top 10 mark in all of college basketball. One thing this team will not do is put you under duress. They're right around about 300th in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and they don't haul in there a lot of second and third chances for themselves, but they don't allow you to haul in their second and third chances either. Amari Bynum along with Christoph Tilley have been able to combine for a little bit over 10 rebounds per game. They've been dealing with a little bit of an injury to Brandon Noel, but he was more of an ancillary guy that hasn't affected them too much. They've had guys in the interim be able to step up. Gabe Cup's probably going to be seeing some more minutes, and he doesn't give you a lot of scoring, but helps facilitate just a skoge more, and I do think that Minnesota is going to have a tough time breaking through against a Ohio State team that does a great job guarding the perimeter. Set my line at a 12.5. I'm going to be willing to lay with the Ohio State, and I'm in on the under. Set my total at a 140.5. 607, 608 on the card. LSU on the road against Florida. Florida is a 14.5 to a 15-point favorite. So on this game is 158.5, and I did set a total here of a 160.5. I do like the over. You've got an LSU team that's been a top 40 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and for LSU, they are a team that their main kryptonite has been 3-point shooting defense. They are outside the top 185 in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, and for Florida, the 3-point shooting has been rough all season long. Right now for this Florida team, they are outside the top 320 with their 3-point shooting percentage. Right now, as a matter of fact, 351st. They shoot just 27.8% from 3. I think they're starting to figure it out a little bit more. Over the weekend, they were able to knock down a few threes, so that was an encouraging sign. This team is still having a tough time taking care of the ball. They're outside the top 190 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, but the De'Don Thomas injury is really reigning supreme for this LSU team. He's been their top guy, the main facilitator with about 7 assists, 16.5 points per contest. Without him, they had a spirited effort against Texas A&M. They had a good effort against Kentucky, but they just really have not been the same team. You do have Michael DeWolko down low, who's able to give you 14.6 rebounds per game. Max McKinnon, a little bit of a do-it-all guy, 93% free throw shooter, 42% three-point shooter, 15 points per game. Mark Helson gives you some boards, but they're just not going to be able to hold up down low against this Florida team. Florida is right now numero uno in all of college basketball in terms of rebound percentage. Just so many guys are able to hit the glass. Ruben Chinyelu, 11.5 points, 10.5 rebounds per game. Alex Condon is able to give you about 8 boards, 14.5 points per game. Thomas Haw is actually your top 3-point shooter at 34.7%, but I mean, he's supplying 17.5 points points, 6.5 rebounds. Micah hand-logged in 6 rebounds per game. They just need to get Boogie Flang going. It's been a disappointing year for him. 11.5 points, 3.5 assists, but he's shooting 21% from 3. I really think that they need to give Irvin Klofstar some more minutes. He's been shooting about 35.5% from the outside, but even if they don't, I just think that this is a little bit of an uphill battle for LSU. Now, I just don't know if I could trust in this Florida backcourt enough to be able to lay this number. I set my number at a 14.5. So once we get to 15 plus, I'm going to be willing to take the points. It's still an LSU team that has been pretty rock solid on offense, and Florida's going to be looking to push tempo a bit. In terms of total possessions per game right now, they check in 44, so do like the over and at 15 plus. Going to be willing to take those points with LSU. 609, 610 on the card. Indiana's going to be on the road against Michigan. Michigan does find themselves as 15.5 point favorites. 161.5 to 162.5 is the total, and I said Michigan has a 14-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Indiana. Indiana's been a pretty rock solid defense, but the offense is starting to all of a sudden slide away from them a little bit. For Indiana, overall for the season, so about 41st in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They are scoring 16.8 points fewer per 100 possessions away from them rather than at home, and for Indiana, really good perimeter defense. This team is a top 40 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but they're not going to be able to get anything easy inside. This is a Michigan unit that currently is number 2 in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, a top 3 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and for Indiana, they're going to be looking to the outside to their guy in Lamar Wilkerson to keep them lively. 19 points per contest, a shot 41.5% from 3. Team as a whole shoots about 35.5% from 3-point. They've been pretty steady there, but the one thing that this team does not do, they don't give you second and third chances. This Indiana team, they are outside the top 250 in terms of their offensive rebound percentage, just 9.6 offensive rebounds per game. As a matter of fact, you don't have a single guy in the roster that gives you over 5 rebounds per game. Tucker DeVries is a do-it-all guy, 14 points, 4.8 boards, 3 assists per contest. She's about 33% from 3. Reed Bailey and Sam Alexis both give between 4.5 and 4.8 rebounds per game. And Connor Enright has done a nice job in terms of drawing it out, but I do think that they're going to have a tough time with a Michigan team that is going to be able to own the boards. You've got Ade Mera at like 7'2", 7'3", being able to supply 7.5 plus rebounds per game. Moraz Johnson has actually been the top scorer. He and Yaxel Lendeborg both give you 14.1 points per contest. Between the two of them, 13.9 rebounds, 2.7 blocks per contest. Mera throws in there 2.6 blocks by himself. Johnson is able to shoot 40% from 3. Lendeborg, mid-30s three-point shooter. I do think we have found this Michigan team to be getting a little bit overvalued, though. They're still about a country average team in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, even with Ellie Kadu doing a nice job, give you about 10 points, 5 assists, at fewer than 2.5 turnovers per game. And I think that that's just enough for an Indiana team that has been able to hold up quite well on defense. They're a relatively mid-tempo team in terms of total possessions per game. Indiana's checking in about 221st. Michigan, they are going to be looking to gun it. Right now, in terms of total possessions per game, they're in the top 20. So I did set a total here of a 162. I think Indiana just does just enough to hold in there. So I'm going to be in on this 162.5 to the under. Would I rather have 162.5 under rather than 161.5 over? And I'm willing to take the points here with Indiana. 6'11", 6'12 on the card. It's Miami of Ohio. They're going to be on the road against Kent State. Kent State opened up as a favorite in a lot of spots. A lot of spots now they're finding themselves as a 1 to 1.5 point underdog. 172 to 172.5 is the total. This time I told you at a 165.5. I'm going to be in on the under. This despite the fact that you've got a Kent State team that's just absolutely gunning it. 13th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but here in conference play, they've slowed down by about 4 to 5 possessions per game fewer. You've got a Miami of Ohio team that's playing fast as well, 64th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but everyone is doubting this Miami of Ohio team at every step. I think that they find a way to get the job done here. I did set them as a favorite of 3.5 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay it. Everyone talks about Miami of Ohio on offense, and rightfully so. They've been a top 30 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. 4th in the country, 3-point shooting percentage away from them at 42.3% at Kent State. 340th in opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. That shoots up to 39.1% at home, but with this Miami of Ohio team, they're also rock solid defense. 52nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Kent State, they've been struggling to be able to take care of the ball. They're about 265th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, not generating the same amount of turnovers that they have in the past, even though you've got Sion Medley in the backcourt, who I love the Medley. He's been able to give you 10.5 points, 7 assists per contest, and the top rebounder in this game does belong to Kent State. That'd be Delrecco Gillespie, 19.8 points, 12.6 rebounds per game. If that doesn't lead the country, that's top 3. And then Morgan Safford has been able to shoot 37% from 3-point, but it's been a little bit Jekyll and Hyde for this Kent State team from the outside. Right now, they're shooting 36.7% from 3, but in conference play, that has dipped to 33.1%. Meanwhile, Miami of Ohio just continues to be as steady Eddie as she energy comes as they've been able to have Peter Suter just really go off. He's supplying the team with about 13.5 points. He shoots 49% for three. Evan Opsero has been missing for the last few games, but Bryant Byers has become the top scorer in the interim, shooting 43.5% for three, 15.5 points per contest. And as a matter of fact, if you include the currently injured Opsero and Justin Kirby, each out of your top 9 players in terms of points per game for Miami of Ohio should at least 37.5% for three. Just absolutely ridiculous what we're seeing out of these guys. They don't necessarily have like dominant rebounding. Ian Elmore, Antoine Woolfolk, they combine for about 11.2 rebounds per game, but even though this is on a team that's really given themselves a lot of second and third chances, one thing that they've been able to do actually a pretty rock solid job of is being able to not allow opponents to be able to grab second and third chances as well. This Miami of Ohio team is actually 38th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage. If you take a look at them in a road/core venue that does ascend into the top 30, and I think that that's enough to be able to stave off yet another upset bid and get the job done. Set my total 165.5. I like the under, and with Miami of Ohio, I'm willing to lay up to 3 with them. 6-13, 6-14 on the card. NC State is on the road against Clemson. Clemson finds themselves as a mid-tier favorite here of 3 to 3.5 points. 141.5 to 142.5 is the total. I did set a total of a 146. I'm going to be in on the over. This actually opened up more around a 144.5, so we're seeing this total getting pile driven downward as you've got an NC State team that's been quite efficient on offense, top 40 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and they're fast, but they're not warp speed fast. 130th in terms of total possessions per game. Clemson is just really sticking games into the mud outside the top 3 in terms of total possessions per game, and they're not allowing you to get second and third chances. 26th in all of college basketball in terms of defensive rebound percentage, and as this Clemson team always does, they're doing a rock solid job on defense. How about 18th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis when they're specifically at home? That ascends into the top 15, and NC State has not been a bad defense themselves. They're about 62nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and I do think that they are going to do just enough to hold in here. I'm going to be willing to take the points as I set my line at 2, as for NC State, it's been a little bit of a disappointing year for Darion Williams. 14 points, 5.5 boards, 3.5 assists for the average player is very good, and he's shooting like 40% from 3, but it seems like he's tapered off a little bit recently. But you've got Kadir Copeland with a lot of versatility, 6 assists to about 2.8 turnovers per game, 13.5 points, shoots 49% from 3. Paul Air McNair shoots 41% from the outside, and as a matter of fact, each of your top 6 scorers for NC State shooting at least 37.5% from 3-point. Team as a whole shoots 39.8% from 3. That's the top 10 mark in all of college basketball. But again, now you're facing off against a Clemson team that has been very locked down. They're allowing teams to shoot less than 30% from 3-point. So I do think that that's going to make things a little bit more of a slog. And for Clemson, it's a whole greater than the sum of its parts approach. 9 different guys give between 5.3 to 12 points per game, with RJ Godfrey being that top scorer, 12 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. You've got Carter Welling supplying about 6 rebounds as a steal per game. And for Clemson, they're not necessarily a heat-seeking missile in terms of generating turnovers, but they keep things clean themselves. They're a top 30 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They're about a country average team with their 3-point shooting, but I do think that in the end, Clemson finds a way to be able to get the job done outright on the money line, but I think that NC State is going to make this a big giant tussle. Made my total 146 like the over, and with Clemson made them 2-point favorites, so taking the points with NC State. 6-15, 6-16 on the card. You got St. Louis on the road against Duquesne. Duquesne is a home underdog of 10 to 10.5 points. On this game, 163.5 to 164.5. And I'm willing to lay with St. Louis. I set St. Louis as a 14-point favorite. How about this team being in the top 10 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis? Number 5 in terms of points per possession. Number 10 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. This team is really checking all the boxes, and it's a whole greater than sum of its parts team, as insane as it is to say, because they've got Robbie Avila on the roster. And with the St. Louis team, other than having some turnover issues, which Duquesne has worse ones, St. Louis about a country average team in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Duquesne in their home games are about 313th of the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. This team has really been doing everything well, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Right now for the St. Louis team, they're also a top 25 team with regards to their rebound percentage. You've got a lot of guys that they just chip in with that regard. Kellen Thames is able to give you about 6 boards, 10.5 points per game. Amari McCautry, Deion Brown, they both give you between 10.5 to 11.5 points per game. Between the two of them, 11.7 rebounds per game. Robbie Avila is your top scorer, but only with about 12.5 points per contest. He's now shooting 44.5% from 3-point range. Trey Green is shooting 44% from 3. You've got this team just absolutely rocking and rolling in every single way. And for Duquesne, it's been up, down, all around for them. They've been dealing with injury to John Hughley, a guy that was a standout over at Pittsburgh a few seasons ago. They have gotten him back, but in the 2 games since he's returned, he hasn't been 100%, a combined 10 points in those 2 contests. Still have Terrence Guignard in the backcourt backcourt, give you 16 points, shoots about 40% from three-point range. And Jacob Nisis has shot 46% from the outside, albeit on low volume, but outside of Hughley, Jimmy Williams is like your lone guy that gives you double figures, about 15 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. And it's a Duquesne team that is looking to gun it. Right now, they are 32nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. St. Louis, they're obviously not shy to run either. They're about 50th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. So I did set a higher total here. I did make my total a 166. I'm going to be in on the over, but with Duquesne, even though they are a top 35 team with regards to their own two-point shooting percentage, I think that the turnovers, the sloppiness, and the way that St. Louis is executing in every single facet of basketball, I think that the Pelicans just continue to roll. Set St. Louis as 14-point favorite. I'm willing to lay the number, and I'm going to be in on this subtle over as well. 617, 618 on the card. Oklahoma is on the road against South Carolina. South Kakalaki is a 1 to a 1.5 point favorite. 149.5 to 150.5 is the total. Set Oklahoma is a 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be one take a shot on them on the money line. It's an Oklahoma team that has been lackluster with their defense, 153rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Not like South Carolina has been amazing themselves. They're about 117th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Both of these teams have some pretty demonstrative home and road splits. You've got an Oklahoma team that overall has been 31st in terms of points per possession, but in their games played away from home, about 20.4 points fewer per 100 possessions than when they're at home. And South Carolina has been about 75th in the country in terms of points per possession. It is a South Carolina team that's been able to do a very good job on the interior. As for South Carolina, 25th in the country in terms of their two-point shooting percentage. If you look specifically at their home games, that goes down to about 35th, and they've been able to do a nice job in terms of being able to take care of the ball, in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. They're a top 55 team in all of college basketball, but they're outside the top 3 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and this is a unit that is shooting less than 33% from three-point range. Now, it's a South Carolina team that is going to have to go up against an Oklahoma unit that has been very good on the interior. They've been a top 125 team in terms of opponent's two-point shooting percentage. Your kryptonite has been giving it up from 3, and South Carolina takes a lot of threes. They just don't hit them, though. B.G. Johnson has been able to give you 14 points per contest, shoots in the low to mid-30s from three-point range. You've had Mongolia and Mike do a nice job, give you about 5 to 6 rebounds per game, supplies the team with double figures, but after that, you get a lot of mixing and matching. Meanwhile, Muhammad Wagyu, along with Tay Davis down low, are combined for 14 rebounds per game for Oklahoma. Wagyu only gives you about 7 points per game, but a block and a half. Tay Davis, 12.5 points. He doesn't pop it well from 3, but that's why you've got Nigel Peck along Xavier Brown. Brown, 16 points, 3 assists, and he's right now shooting about 34% from 3, and packs it in at about 43% from three-point range. We have seen this team struggle a little bit with their three-point shooting percentage when they have been in conference play, but I do think that they're going to be able to take it to a South Carolina team that has been just having a whole bunch of struggles in general. Now, if this is a little bit of a tight game and it comes down to some late-game foulings, you do have a South Carolina team that does shoot 78% at the free throw line. That is a top 20 mark in all of college basketball. And South Carolina, good at being able to guard the three-point line. They've been a top 40 team with that regard, but Oklahoma also shoots 73+% at the free throw line. I do think that Oklahoma, with that backcourt play and them taking care of the ball themselves, top 40 team, in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, they persevere in a mid-tempo game. Neither of these teams necessarily looking to push a lot of tempo. South Carolina is about 231st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Oklahoma, 164th. So, semi-total 147.5. I like the under, and Oklahoma on the money line made them the 1.5 point favorite. 619, 620 on the card. Central Florida is on the road against Iowa State. Iowa State, a sizable favorite here of 13.5 to 14.5 points. 156.5 is the total. I'm in on the under. I set my total at a 149.5. You still have a Iowa State team that is a top 10 team in terms of both points allowed on a per possession basis and also turnovers forced on a per possession basis. But what they're really doing a good job of at home is not allowing second and third chances. They are second in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage at home. Teams are rebounding fewer than 15% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. And for Central Florida, that's their lifeblood. They rebound 36% of their misses as an offensive rebound. That's a top 25 mark in all of college basketball. And for Iowa State, I do think that you're going to start to see a little bit of regression with them shooting 40.5% from 3. Milan Mimosilovic, 54% three-point shooter, 18 points per contest. Joshua Jefferson, one of the most versatile men in all of college basketball, 15.5 points, 7.5 boards, 5 assists, steal per contest, shooting 36% from 3. They need a little bit more after Mon Lipsby on the offensive side of things, but still 2.3 steals, 5.5 assists to less than 1 turnover per game. He's been so efficient there, and when it comes to the Central Florida group, you do have a lot of guys that they do a nice job being able to hit the boards. Jermichael Stillwell and Themis Folks both come over from UW Milwaukee. Folks, 14 points, 7.5 assists, shooting 50% from 3. Stillwell shoots in the mid-30s from 3, 12.5 points per game, and it's a Central Florida team that overall they shoot 37.4% from 3. That's a top 35 mark in all of college basketball. It takes a little bit of a drop-off away from home, but then you've got John Bull along with Devin Cambridge. Both give you about 4.5 rebounds per game. It is a Central Florida team that's not shy to run, while Iowa State is a little bit more mid-tempo. Iowa State State about 180th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. For Central Florida, they're more around about 67th, but I think that Iowa State gets back to the roots, plays good, rock-solid defense, and those second chances that are typically there for Central Florida won't be, and that'll be the difference. So I did set my line at a 17.5. I'm going to lay with Iowa State, and I'm in on the under. I set my total at a 149.5, 621, 622. It's Seton on the road against St. John's, and St. John's Red Storm find themselves as a pretty good-sized favorite here. You're going to be laying with them 9.5 points to 10 points total on this game, 143.5, and with St. John's, I did set them as a favorite of 8.5 points, so I'm going to be willing to take a shot here on Seton. Seton, a little bit of a less than tremendous effort over the weekend. It's been a little bit wobbly for them recently, but one thing this team is still doing a really good job of is being able to win the turnover battle. Now, I will say, for St. John's, this has also become a defense that has been really good in terms of generating turnovers as well. Right now for Seton, number 9 in the country in terms of turnovers force on a per possession basis. St. John's is number 27, and if you look at the home games and the home games only for St. John's, they generated a turnover on about 21.4% of possessions, and for St. John's, they are going to have the rebound advantage. Zuby Ejiofor being able to give you 14 plus points, 7 plus rebounds per game has been rock solid. St. John's, a top 65 team with regards to their overall rebound percentage. Seton Hall, though, they're about 68th in the country, and they're doing it with Stephon Payne, the Payne train, being able to give you about 6.5 to 7 rebounds per game. From there, it's just a lot of mixing and matching. You've really only got one other guy that's able to give you over 5 rebounds per game. That'd be Najee Hines, but AJ Sam McCray, Adam Clark, these two guys combined for about 22 points per contest. Sam McCray has been able to shoot about 35% from 3, and it's a Seton Hall team that they're outside the top 3 with their 3-point shooting percentage. They only shoot 30.7% from the outside. They're not shooting it great inside as well. They're outside the top 250 in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage, but they're giving themselves second and third chances. They're a top 125 team in terms of taking care of the ball. They find a way to get to the free throw line, and they're just that good on defense. They're a top 25 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage as well. They allow opponents to shoot less than 31.5% from 3. St. John's has been a much better 3-point shooting team than they were a season ago with Isaiah Sellers, along with Jusan Seton. Combined shoot about 39.5% from 3-point. Between the two of them, you get 21 to 21.5 points per game, and then Bryce Hopkins, good versatility, 13.5 points, 5 boards, but it is a St. John's team that, even though they grab a lot of offensive rebounds themselves, they give up a lot of second and third chances as well. St. John's, they're outside the top 100 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, outside the top 60 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. I think that that's just enough for Seton to remain lively. St. John's is going to be looking to bump up the tempo, while Seton, they're very content to play slow. Seton, 302nd in terms of total possessions per game. St. John's 31st, but I do think that the defense going to reign supreme here, so my total at a 142.5, so I'm in on the under, and I'm willing to take anything of 9 plus here with Seton. 623, 624 on the card. It is Miami, and they're going to be playing against Florida State. Florida State is a underdog of 11.5 points, 166.5 is the total. I made a total of 164.5. I'm in on the under. Now, Florida State is absolutely looking to gun in terms of total possessions per game. This unit is 17th in all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game, while Miami's 100th, and this Miami team has just been absolutely dominant on the glass this year. 13th in the country in terms of overall rebound percentage. Florida State, they are not so dominant, as right now for Florida State, 235th in the country with that regard, and it's a Florida State team that takes over 51% of their field goal attempts from 3-point range. It's a top 10 mark in all of college basketball. They live and die by the 3, and right now they're dying by the 3. 276th in terms of their own 3-point shooting percentage in a road/neutral venue. That goes down to about 28.9%. And for Florida State, I think that they need just a little bit of a, shall we say, change of philosophy on offense, because they've actually done a good job in terms of generating turnovers on defense. Offensively, this is a top 45 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, albeit they gamble for turnovers a little bit too much, but have someone like a Robert McCray, so they will give you 13.5 points, a little bit over a steal. He only shoots 30% from 3. As a matter of fact, each of your top 3 scorers for this team shoot less than 31.1% from 3-point range. Lajay Jones, along Chauncey Wiggins, both give you between 11 to 12.1 points per contest. Lone guy on the roster that gives you over 5 rebounds per game, despite how fast they play, is Alex Steen with 5.8 rebounds per game. So it's just been a big giant mixed match. And for Martin Somerville, shooting 38% from 3, lone guy on the roster that shoots above 31.1% from 3. And then for Miami, they're just going to be able to dominate this game down low. You've got Malik Reneau, who's been able to do a great job in terms of supplying a little bit of everything, and he's been able to pop it a bit from 3-point range as well at about 6'9". Shoots 34% from 3, 19.5 points, 6.5 boards, pair of assists, a steal, a block per contest. Trey Donaldson, a steal and a half, 16 points. It's not an amazing 3-point shooting team. They shoot about 33.8% from the outside. That's country average, but the way that they're able to control the boards, Miami, they're a top 70 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They actually do give up quite a bit from 3. They're outside the top 225 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but they make up for it in pretty much every single other facet in all of college basketball. And the way that Florida State is not popping it and locking it from three-point range, I do think that Miami finds a way to be able to get the job done in an intrastate rivalry. Did set my line at 14.5. I'm going to be willing to lay with Miami. Set a total of a 164.5, so you're at the 166.5. I also like the under. 625, 626 on the card. Western Michigan plays us a Bowling Green. Bowling Green, a 6.5 to a 7.5 point road favorite. Total on this game, it is 155.5, and I did set Bowling Green as 5.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Western Michigan. Western Michigan, I've had to upgrade quite a bit because they got Justice Williams back, and he was out for the first 10 plus games of the season. 2 years ago, he's one of the top scorers over at Robert Morris. Missed all of last season, but in the 5 games that he's been out there, how about 19.6 points per game on 44% 3-point shooting? I think that regresses a little bit, and now they have to face off against the Bowling Green team that has been actually really, really supreme with their defense, and they're not allowing a lot of second and third chances. Bowling Green is playing fast. They're not necessarily playing warp speed fast, 85th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, which Todd Simon's teams are always going to play relatively fast. And in terms of this Bowling Green team being able to shut you off, they are 21st in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis on defense, 76th in terms of road rebound percentage on defense as well. And Western Michigan, 247th in terms of turnovers per possession. It's a Western Michigan team that's looking to push a little bit of tempo as well. Right now, they're about 128th in terms of total possessions per game, so they're fast. They're not necessarily just absolutely gunning it, and they do shoot about 35% from three-point range at home, but I do think that Bowling Green is going to be able to do a good job of staying out in front of them. And then in terms of Western Michigan guys outside of Justice Williams, you've got Jaden Brewer along with Jalen Griffith, who have been able to combine for about 28 points per contest, and Griffith shoots 39% from three-point range. Not a team that's really going to do a great job on the glass right now for Western Michigan. They are a team that is outside the top 125 in terms of offensive rebound percentage, and where the team really gets splits is on the inside. Outside the top 200 in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage, outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and for Bowling Green, solid 3-point shooting team. They shoot about 35.3% from 3-point range. That's the top 100 mark in all of college basketball. In a road/score venue, goes to 39.7%. I think that that's going to be going downward a little bit, but love what Javonte Campbell brings to the table. 18 points, 3.3 steals. That's the top 5 mark in the country. 5 boards, 4.7 assists per game. And then Meyer Wool, he stands about 6'6"-ish, 47.5% 3-point shooter, 13.5 points per game. Sam Towns is able to give you 12.5 points per game. And in a pressure spot, team does shoot about 74.5% at the free throw line, but even with what Bowling Green does really well, I do think that Western Michigan being able to get back out there Justice Williams, that not only helps them on offense, but a little bit on defense. So set a total of 147.5. I like the under, and I'm willing to take anything of 6+ here with Western Michigan. 627, 628. Ball State is on the road against Central Michigan. Central Michigan is a home underdog of 1 to 1.5 points. 142 to 142.5 is the total. Set by total of 137. I like the under. You had a pair of teams that are really not going to be looking to push tempo. Central Michigan 247th of the country in terms of total possessions per game. Ball State 323rd, and these are teams that are not lighting it up from 3-point range. For Ball State, 307th in the country in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage, 347th for Central Michigan, and I did set Ball State as a 1-point underdog here, despite the fact that they've been a top 125 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, mainly because this team is just getting absolutely dump trucked on the glass. 334th in terms of their overall rebound percentage, and for this Ball State team, they just have absolutely nothing down low. And not that this Central Michigan team has been anything special this year, but you got a 7-footer, Nathan Klebot, who's able to give you 12.5 points, 6 rebounds per game. I think that reigns supreme in this matchup. Fat Brooks comes over from Michigan, great name. He and Tamario Adley have been able to combine for about 22 points per game. And Adley shoots 37% from 3. Logan McIntyre shoots 36.5% from the outside. Really, the lone 2 guys on the roster that shoot above 33% from 3. The injury to Rodney Johnson, who came in from Tennessee Tech, that has been ailing this team quite a bit. But for Ball State, you really don't have a single guy that gives you over 12.7 points per contest, as Amani Ziegler and Davion Hill, they give you a combined about 25 points per game, and Hill shoots 38% from 3. Ziegler about a steal and a half, 3 assists, 5 rebounds per game, but he is your leading rebounder for the team. Their number 3 scorer in Joey Hart is still dealing with a little bit of an injury. Juwan Maxey has been dealing with ailment as well. Elmore James has only been able to give you about 8.5 points per contest, and for this Ball State team, they're also outside the top 275 in terms of both their own 2-point shooting percentage and opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. Ball State does an okay job in terms of taking care of the ball, but I do think that in the end, Central Michigan having that size down low allows them to get the job done in a slog. I did set my line here at a 1 with Central Michigan being the favorite, so taking them on the money line, and I'm going to be in on the under. 629, 630. You've got Ohio. They play us to Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois, an underdog of 12 to 12.5 points. 151 to 151.5 is the total, and I made a total of 146.5. I do like the under. This is a Northern Illinois team that is looking to play at a relatively moderate pace, about 138th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Ohio, they find themselves more in that neighborhood, about 93rd, so they've been looking to push tempo a little bit. And with Ohio, they've been struggling on the glass, 263rd in terms of their overall rebound percentage. And you actually do have a Northern Illinois team that's able to give themselves some second and third chances. This team, 126th in terms of offensive rebound percentage, but that said, they are really just not taking any sort of care of the ball whatsoever, which is a big reason why I'm in on this total under for Northern Illinois. 363rd in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. They do have Jai Otika, who I remember when he was over at Marist many years ago, was a 40+% three-point shooter. He's been rather pedestrian this year, only giving you about a mid-30s three-point shooting percentage, thrown in there about 7.5 points per game. You do have Makai Valentine along Dylan Duquesne, who have been able to combine for 26 points per game, and with Duquesne, he's been able to also give you about 3.5 assists per game, but 3.6 turnovers per contest, and it's a Northern Illinois team that is a top 150 team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, getting destroyed down low. They are outside the top 340 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. Ohio is getting absolutely dump trucked with regards to their three-point shooting defense as well. They're outside the top 260 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but they have been a top 55 team in terms of their own two-point shooting percentage. Now, I could only set my line at a 10.5 because this team is also shooting 30.5% from three. A little bit better in conference. In conference, they've been seeing that go up just a scotch, but man, it's been rough for the team. You do have Jackson Pavletsky shooting 37.5% from three, 17.5 points per contest, and then AJ Shelton is the lone other guy on the roster that shoots above 33% from three, shoots about 35.5% with 7 points per contest. Aiden Attaway, 7.5 boards, 14 points per game, and then Javon Simmons throws in their 5 boards per contest as well. Just really hard to trust in this Ohio team. They've been outside the top 200 with regards to their ball security. They've been getting just absolutely blasted on the glass. I think that Northern Illinois is going to hold in there in what I think is going to be a very sloppy game. Set my total at a 146.5. I like the under, and I'm going to take 11 plus here with Northern Illinois. 831, 832 is Loyola Chicago. They're going to be on the road against St. Bonaventure, and the Bonnies find themselves as a favorite here of 10.5 to 11.5 points. So this game, it is 147.5 to 148.5, and I set my total at 143.5. I like the under. You've got a Loyola Chicago team that is not looking to push tempo whatsoever. In terms of total possessions per game, right now they are checking in about 328th. Meanwhile, for St. Bonaventure, they're playing a little bit more quickly than they have in past seasons, but still not a team that's going to be looking to bump it up by any stretch of the imagination. 252nd in terms of total possessions per game, and for both of these teams, turnovers have been an issue. The Bonnies are about 188th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Loyola Chicago 273rd, and Loyola Chicago just does not force the issue. They are outside the top 340 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. For Loyola Chicago, you've been just having a lot of injuries in general for this team, with Xavier Amos missing much of the season. Miles Rubin has been really the main constant for this team. Down low, he's been able to supply the team with about 11.5 points, 7 boards, 2.5 blocks per contest, so that's been big for them. And Justin Moore has been able to give you more in the backcourt, right around about 12.5 points per contest, but it's a Loyola Chicago team that are outside the top 290 with their 3-point shooting percentage. Their 2-point shooting percentage has been a little bit better, and their free throw shooting percentage is outside the top 300 as well, so it's not good to say the least. And for Loyola Chicago, they're allowing teams to shoot over 37% from 3-point. I do think that they get cooked with that regard, as you've got Daryl Buddy Simmons for the St. Bonaventure team, who's been rock solid with about 15 points, 3 assists. He shoots 40% from 3, and Bonaventure is a top 55 team with their 3-point shooting percentage hovering right around about 36.9%. It's a Bonaventure team that struggles to get to the free throw line, but when they get there, they shoot about 75.5%. And at the charity stripe, they haven't been quite as good with their interior play with regards to their just opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, being outside the top 175. But what the team is able to do is rebound. You've got a guy that's able to give you darn near a double-double in Frank Mitchell, 10.5 rebounds, about 17.5 points per game with Loyola Chicago. They're a team that's well outside the top 225 in terms of their overall rebound percentage. Meanwhile, you've got a Bonaventure team that has been a top 150 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. They give themselves some second and third chances, and I think that this Loyola Chicago team just continues to stay down. I think the Bonaventure is able to refine it on defense, as currently they're about 212th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So by total 143.5, I'm in on the under, and I'm going to lay up to 15 here with St. Bonaventure. 633, 634. You've got DePaul, and they're going to be on the road facing off against Butler. Butler is a 7.5 to an 8.5 point favorite. 149.5 to 150.5 is a total. I'm set DePaul as a 7.5 point underdog. I'm willing to take a plus with them for DePaul. This has actually been a pretty rock solid defense. Not necessarily doing the world's greatest job on the glass, 153rd in terms of defensive rebound percentage. And what has been a forte for this Butler team has been grabbing a lot of second and third chances, as this team is 34th in the country in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. Big reason why is Michael Ajayi. He comes over from Pepperdine and Gonzaga. He has not been able to find that 3-point shooting stroke that he once once upon a time had over at Pepperdine, but still, he's right now giving you about 16 points, 11.8 rebounds per game. And then Finley Bizjack, he's been Bizjacking teams, shooting 35% from three, 16.5 points per contest for Butler. Not going to generate a lot of turnovers outside the top 260 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. And this Butler team is looking to gun at 45th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. DePaul, a little bit more of a mid-tempo team at right around about 214th. And additionally, for this Butler team, you've been able to get some good outside shooting out of Evan Haywood, 7.5 points. He shoots 37.5% from three, but they're down to shooting about 33.8% from the outside. And for DePaul, even though you don't necessarily have great offense with this team outside the top 150 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they do turn the ball over about 12 times per contest. They're a top 125 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. They're great on the interior, top 50 team in terms of opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. And now you've got CJ Gunn stepping up as that top scorer, 14.5 points, 3.5 boards, shoots 36% from three. Landon Blocker, about 4 assists and 2 turnovers per game. You've had NJ Benson be able to supply about 7 rebounds per game. It's a DePaul team that really doesn't excel in one thing, but they're just doing everything okay. They're holding up defensively. They're doing a nice job making sure that games are a little bit slower. I think that they hold in there in this one. So I'm out line at 7.5, so at 8+. Won't take the points with DePaul, and I'm going to be in on the under. I did set my total at a 147.5. 635, 636, Illinois, Chicago is going to be playing us to Evansville, and the Purple Aces of Evansville are an underdog here of 8.5 to 9 points. 136.5 to 138 is the total, and with Illinois, Chicago, I made them a favorite of 12.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number for Evansville. This is a unit that is looking to play very slowly in terms of total possessions per game. Right now, they're checking in about 198th in all of college basketball, and for Evansville, they're just simply not executing on offense. This is a team that's supposed to be built around forward play, and they're 338th in terms of percent of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, 341st in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. And for Illinois Chicago, they have been a top 30 team in terms of their offensive rebound percentage. Now they're outside the top 320 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, so both they get a lot of second and third chances to score, and their opponents do as well. And for Illinois Chicago, they are outside the top 260 with regards to points per possession in specifically their home games, but I just am feeling quite bearish right now about this Evansville team, one that is going through an injury to their top scorer in Connor Turnbull. Turnbull for the season, 12.5 points, supplying the team with about 6 rebounds per game, but we really haven't seen him since January 4th, probably not going to be available in this game. That means that Joshua Hughes and AJ Casey, who combine for about 19.5 points per contest, and Hughes does shoot 36.5% from three. They're going to need to step up in a big way. Evansville has had a tough time taking care of the ball outside the top 320 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. They're getting cooked from the outside. They're outside the top 275 in terms of both their own 3-point shooting percentage and opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. So things are just very much not going right for them, to say the least. And for Illinois Chicago, it's not as if this has been like a thing of beauty for them or anything like that, but you know, you've got some good guard play with Andy Johnson, Ahmad Henderson, both give you 12.9 points per contest, with Johnson, he's shooting 35.5% from three in a pressure spot. Both of these guys shoot over 88% at the free throw line as well. You've had Mekhi Lowry step up with about 8.5 points, 6 rebounds per game. They dealt with an injury to Elijah Crawford all throughout the season, but now they finally have gotten him back, and he's been able to give the team a combined 15 assists to 4 turnovers in their last 2 games, so that should be able to elevate the offense. You've got Abdul Mamoa, who's still pretty rock solid down low, giving you about a block and a half per contest as well. And for this Illinois Chicago team, they've been very good in terms of generating turnovers. Top 75 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. I think that you get an ugly game, but one where Evansville just is not able to execute whatsoever, and that allows Illinois Chicago to cover a pretty large number. I set my line at 12.5. Won't delay with Illinois Chicago. Made my total at 132.5, so I'm also in on the under. 637, 638. It's Oklahoma State on the road against TCU. TCU is a favorite here of 8 to 8.5 points on this game. 161.5 to 162.5. Made my total a 162.5. This opened up at a 163. Personally, I would have rather had a 163 under rather than a 161.5 over, but at the current number, I am in on the over at a 162 or less, but I am going to be willing to take the points with Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State seems to have really figured it out on offense with Anthony Roy coming in. He's been able to give the team 15 plus points per contest, shoots nearly 40% from three, and for Oklahoma State, the team is overall 67th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis in games played away from home. That does drop a little bit outside the top 75, and the main kryptonite for this team is taking care of the ball. For Oklahoma State, this team team is checking in right around about 150th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, but if you look at them in games played away from home, they're actually a top 30 team in terms of taking care of the ball. Meanwhile, the forte of the TCU defense, a TCU defense that has been in the top 30 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, has been their turnovers. They're a top 45 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They do a good job down low with David Punch, giving you that punch with about 7.5 rebounds per game, over a block and a half per contest, and then additionally, in terms of being able to dole out the ball on offense, you got Brock Harding doing a really good job being the main floor general, 8.5 points, 6.2 assists per contest, really doesn't turn the ball over a ton either, and for Punch, throws in there about 14 points per game. You've got two main three-point shooters for TCU. Jaden Pierre shoots 41.5% from 3, 10.5 points per contest. Xavier Edmonds, 45% three-point shooter. He supplies the team with 11 points per game as well, but it is a little bit hit or miss with regards to CCU offense. They are outside the top 100 in terms of points per possession in specifically their home games. They've been about a country average team with their 2-point shooting percentage. They've been a top 125 team in terms of guarding things down low, and they do a nice job generating those turnovers, but when you've got someone like a Pasaf Allah who's able to give you 15.6 rebounds per game, whole bunch of double-figure scorers like Victorious Miller has been able to give you 14.5 points per game. He was dealing with a little bit of injury, should be good to go in this one. Jalen Curry, Christian Coleman combined for 21 points per game. I do think that Oklahoma State going to be able to hold in there, and it's an Oklahoma State team that really doesn't take a lot of threes. They're looking up on the ball inside. I think that keeps them lively in this ordeal, so I did set my line here at a 6.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Oklahoma State, and at a 162 or less, I'm in on the over. 639, 640 on the card. Wyoming is going to be playing those to Boise State. Boise State is a 1.5 point road favorite to this game, 146.5, and I made my line 5 with Wyoming being the favorite, so I'm going to be willing to take them outright on the money line. It's a Wyoming team that overall for the season has been mid-tempo, 185th in terms of total possessions per game. In conference play, they have really slowed it down. In conference play, they're playing at a rate of about 6 possessions per game fewer. Boise State, they're 146th in terms of total possessions per game, but that's a warped set. They play that triple overtime game against San Diego State. If you look at them in terms of possessions per 40 minutes, they're well outside the top 200, so I'm going to be in on this under for Boise State, not allowing a lot of second and third chances. They're a top 20 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Teams are only grabbing 23.5% of their misses as an offensive rebound, and you've got a guy in Drew Fielder who's able to give you 13 points, 5 rebounds per game, but even though this team is so good on the defensive glass, they're outside the top 225 in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage, just outside the top 210 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, so it's not like they're necessarily doing the world's greatest job with regards to their interior defense. This team is great at getting to the free throw line. They're a top 45 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis, and Wyoming will put you on the free throw line. That said, with this Wyoming team, they also do a really nice job in terms of being able to generate some turnovers. They've been a top 125 team at home in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. This is a Wyoming team that also does a great job giving themselves some second and third chances. They've been a top 70 team with regards to rebound percentage. This despite the fact that you really don't have anyone on the roster other than Desir Meyer giving you over 4.5 rebounds per game. He supplies 5.2 boards, 13.5 points per game, and then Lelon Walker, 14.5 points per game. Meyer shoots 40% from 3. Walker shoots about 36% from the outside, and then Orion Rojas has been able to give you 7.5 points. He shoots 38% from 3-point range. I do think that Wyoming, being at elevation, they find a way to be able to get the job done. They're going to follow Boise State a little bit. Boise State's going to be able to knock down those free throws, but I just don't know if Boise State is able to get it done on the inside. So, set my line at 5. I like Wyoming here on the money line, and I'm in on the under. I set my total at a 143, 641, 642. Southeast Missouri State plays us at UT Martin. UT Martin is an underdog here of 2.5 to 3 points. Totals between 139.5 to 140.5. Made a total of 146. I do like the over. Now, UT Martin is looking to play pretty slow and control, 270th in terms of total possessions per game. Southeast Missouri State is actually looking and gunning. They're 105th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And for the Southeast Missouri State team, good in terms of generating turnovers, 56th in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. This UT Martin team is a top 110 team themselves. And for UT Martin, they've been really good with regards to their perimeter defense in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Right now, they are checking in number 7 in all of college basketball away from home. They allow teams to only shoot about 31% from 3, and I think that keeps them lively. I did set my line at 2, so at 2.5 plus, I'm going to be willing to take the points. Now, the kryptonite that you got for the UT Martin team is they go up against a team that's good at generating turnovers, and they're 350th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis with regards to their offense. Southeast Missouri State, not that they're amazing, they're more around about 200th, and for Southeast Missouri State, it's going to be paramount to not allow second and third chances. UT Martin is currently 39th in the country in terms of offensive rebound percentage, and for this UT Martin team, they've just dealt with a lot of injuries throughout the season, so now they're finally starting to get these guys all on the same page with one another because they've been dealing with the Dragos Lagu injury for about 12, 13 games. He was averaging 14 points per contest. Andrea Bramakovic has been able to give you 15 points, 8.5 rebounds, shoots 42% from 3. He's your main scorer, and pretty much the only of your top 5 scorers that does shoot above 33% from 3-point range. But that said, Filip Rakovic has been able to give you about 11 points, 5 boards, throws in there, 2.5 assists per contest. It's sort of a whole greater than some of its parts effort with this team, and they've also been a top 75 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage as well. But with this UT Martin team, I think that they're going to struggle a little bit with a Southeast Missouri State team that has been able to do a pretty rock-solid job with regards to their backcourt, and Braxton Secker along Luke Almondover being able to combine for about 26.5 points per contest. They combine to shoot about 33.5% from 3. This team only shoots about 30% from 3, so that's forte of UT Martin being able to guard the 3-point arc. This is going to mean a little bit less here as Southeast Missouri State top 75 team in terms of percentage of their shots that come from inside the 3-point line, and they've been a top 150 team with that 2-point shooting percentage. They do a nice job rebounding by committee, as you've got Marquise Ball and Brandon Terry combining for 10.2 rebounds per game, 19.5 points between the two of them. Landon Blocker, 5.5 points, 4 boards. He actually shoots in the mid-30s from 3. In the end, I do think that Southeast Missouri State gets the outright win, but with them shooting 67.9% the free throw line, I'm going to elect for the points here with UT Martin in a tight spot, so we'll take the 2.5 to 3 here with UT Martin, and I'm in on the over. 6:43, 6:44 on the card. Rutgers is on the road against Iowa. Iowa's an 18.5 to a 19.5 point favorite. So on this game, 137.5 to a 139, and I do like the under here. I said I told 133.5. Rutgers is not playing with any sort of tempo whatsoever. In terms of total possessions per game, 264th in the country. Now, the Rutgers defense has certainly fallen off a cliff. Meanwhile, they've actually been able to give themselves some second and third chances. They're 83rd in the country in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. Rutgers right now 217th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but you've got an Iowa team that they do a tremendous job in terms of slowing games down. They are 23rd in the country overall in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, while being 360th in terms of total possessions per game. And for Iowa, name of the game for them, turnovers. Top 20 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. It's not that Rutgers has been atrocious at taking care of the ball. They're about 102nd in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, but away from home, that drops well outside the top 225. And for Rutgers, you really have two guys that you're feeding off of for offense, as Tariq Francis has been good in the backcourt with about 15 points, 2.5 assists from 3-point, shoots about 32.5%, and then you've got Dylan Grant, who shoots 36.5% from the outside, 11.5 points per game. JaMychal Davis only throws in their 8 points, but does shoot 39% from 3. Rutgers as a whole, they shoot about 32.5% from the outside, hovering right around about 250th in the country. Where they really suck is inside, though. They're outside the top 330 in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage, and this is always supposed to be a team that's supposed to be rock solid down low. Now, they don't put you on the free throw line, top 125 team in terms of fewest free throws allowed on a per possession basis, but they've been getting lambasted on the inside. And for Iowa, it's a team that's just built around Bennett Sturtz and all of his versatility. 5 assists, steal and a half, 18 points, shoots 39% from 3. Even though it's an Iowa team that they like to play slow and controlled, they're just really efficient. A top 30 team in terms of points per possession, and they do have some of the most demonstrative home and road splits that you're going to find in all of college basketball. If you look just at the home games and the home games only for this Iowa team, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, right now they are checking in the top 10 in all of college basketball. That falls way down when they're away from home, as they are scoring about 25.3 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than when they are at home. And for Iowa, you've been able to get some good rebounding by committing out of like Cam Manny-Woos to be able to give you 4.5 rebounds per game. Alvaro Fogirius right around 3.8 boards, 8 points at 6'9", shoots 40% from 3. I do think that Iowa is going to be able to control the contender of this game. I just don't know if you get enough possessions to be able to cover this big of a number, though. Did set my line at 17.5, so at 18 plus, we'll take the points with Rutgers, and I'm also on the under. Semi total 133.5, 645, 646. SMU is going to be on the road against Wake Forest. Wake Forest, a home underdog of 1 to 1.5 points, 158.5 to 160 is the total, and made a total of 163.5. I do like the over. SMU just absolutely gunning it right now. 35th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Wake Forest not afraid to run either. 55th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And Wake Forest a good but not great defense. They're hovering right around about 88th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. SMU has been quite a bit worse than that. They're about 110th in the country in terms of points per possession allowed, giving up 15.2 points more per 100 possessions when they're away from home. But Wake Forest, they are doing a great job with their perimeter defense. 13th in the country in terms of turnover turnovers forced on a per possession basis, top 40 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and that's going to take away some of the fortes that you've got for this SMU offense, as the former Wake Forest guard and Kevin Miller has been your main headline guy. I refuse to call him Boopy, but he has been booping teams for 20.5 points, 6.8 assists, shoots 39% from three. Corey Washington is a 40% 3-point shooter who supplies about 11.5 points per game, and you do have BJ Edwards giving you 2.5 steals, 5 assists, 5.5 rebounds, 13.5 points. He's been a really nice, versatile guy, but it's a relatively thin rotation for this team as they pretty much go 6.5 players deep. Samat Yedoglu has been able to give you 11 points, 8 rebounds per game, and being how fast that they play, it feels like they get a little bit worn down late in games, and they have been outside the top 175 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Now, they themselves have been a top 75 team in terms of cashing in down low on offense, but for Wake Forest, you have to love what Juke Harris has been able to bring to the table. 20 points, 6 boards from 3-point range. He shoots about 33.5% from 3. Wake Forest shooting only about 33.5% from the outside, and they have been very weak on the inside. Wake Forest is outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but with the way that they generate turnovers in a tight spot, this team shoots about 75.8% the free throw line. That's a top 65 mark in the country. You've had Nate Kalmezi be much more efficient than he has been in past years. 11 points, 5 assists to about 2 turnovers per contest. Miles Colvin, he's been able to shoot 37% from 3, and Kalmezi shoots 40.5% from 3. I think that that's just enough for Wake Forest on their own floor to be able to get it done, and what I think is going to be very much an up and down game. Set my line at 3.5. I like Wake Forest on the money line, and I'm in on the over. I saw my total at a 163.5, 647, 648 on the card. It is Auburn, and they're going to be on the road against Ole Miss. Ole Miss is a home underdog here of 2.5 to 3 points. So this game, 148.5 to 150.5, and I said Auburn as a 2.5 point favorite. So at 3+, I'm going to be willing to take the points. Auburn has been tremendous with their offense. This Auburn team is 34th in the country in terms of points per possession overall. Top 25 team in a roadside-neutral venue. Defense has not been great, to say the least. They're currently 216th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Get them away from home. That falls well outside the top 275. Meanwhile, you've got a Ole Miss team that just hasn't been themselves this year. They're about 85th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. One thing that they do a relatively good job of is being able to take care of the ball. Overall on offense, in terms of points per possession, they're only about 131st, but they're not really going to self-inflict wounds or anything like that. You do have A.J. Storr, who's been a little bit more efficient than he was a season ago at Kansas. He's supplying the team with 13.5 points. He's 37.5% from 3, and then Peyton Prickens has been really one of the main guys that has been able to elevate this team. 8.5 points. She's 44% from 3 points. Not going to get a ton of rebounding here. Malik Dia is the lone guy on the roster that gives you over 3 rebounds per game. 14 points, 4.8 rebounds per game, but even with that, this is an Ole Miss team that has been a top 100 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They've done a good job in terms of being able to take care of the ball, and on the flip side, you've got an Auburn bunch that they should be able to own things out, though. Keshawn Hall has been tremendous for this team. 20.5 points, 7.5 boards, throws in there 3 assists. Shoots about 41% from 3-point range. Kevin Overton, he's been able to shoot about 35% for 3. Supplies you with 12.5 points per game. Keshawn Murphy, 6 rebounds per game, and for Auburn, this team is a not even great 3-point shooting team. Despite that, they've been one of the best offenses in all of college basketball because they've been a top 30 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, because they've got what they've got down low. Tajaj Frediford shoots 27.5% from 3. He's been a disappointment this year, but that defense is just so ghastly that it's hard to be able to trust in it. And I do think that keeps Ole Miss lively, and I think that helps you out with regards to an over, even with this Mississippi team being a very slow and controlled team in terms of total possessions per game, 224. So set by total 154.5. I'm willing to take 3+ here with Ole Miss, and I'm in on the over. 649, 650 on the card. Baylor plays those to Texas Tech. Texas Tech, a road favorite here of 1.5 to 2 points. Totals between 155.5 to 156.5. I did set Texas Tech as a 3.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. I am right there with our guy in Ryan McIntyre. It just feels like this Baylor team, ever since they brought in James Nanji, has went straight down the toilet bowl. You would think that the number 31 overall pick in the draft would be doing something, but I aim for Nanji. Right now, he's given the team 2 points and 4.5 rebounds per game and 14 minutes per game. Cameron Carr has been much more useful than that. 20.5 points. He shoots 43.5% from 3, and it's still a Baylor team that's generating second and third chances. Top 30 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. They shoot 36.5% from 3-point range. That's a top 50 mark in the country. Overall for this Baylor offense, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they're number 32 in the country. Even away from home, they're still in the top 50. Texas Tech has been rock solid with their offense. 35th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. basis. They have been giving up quite a few second and third chances, though. Even though you've got JT Dobbin giving you 22 plus points, 10 plus rebounds per game, they are not getting a lot outside of him on the glass, 126th in the country in terms of defense rebound percentage, so that's been a little bit of a worry, and this is a Texas Tech team that you'd think under Graham McCasland would be a little bit better on defense, but feels like they're starting to figure it out. They're now 94th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, which teams are only shooting about 29.5% from three-point range at home against them, so that's good with having Obi Edgem in the backcourt give you double figures for Baylor, and Tonde Yusufu being as versatile as he is. You need to have Christian Anderson being able to step up, and he's been great. 7.5 assists, 19.5 points per contest. He shoots about 43% from three. You've had Donovan Atwell, shoots 41% from the outside. This team was getting dominated throughout much of that game against BYU, but they were able to do a nice job of rallying their way back. Now Texas Tech away from home, they allowed opponents to shoot about 35% from three compared to that 29.5% at home, but I do think that they're going to be able to do just enough here to be able to find a way to persevere. It's a Texas Tech team that does a nice job taking care of the ball with only about 10.5 turnovers per game, and with Baylor, just feels like it's a very disjointed bunch right now. I did set my line at a 3.5, so I'm going to be willing to lay it here with Texas Tech, and I did set my total at 157 with the way that Texas Tech is not playing a lot of defense, but Baylor has been looking to play a little bit too fast for their own good as well. Texas Tech faster than in past years, 174th in terms of total possessions per game. Baylor 121st, but if you look at their home games, top 100 team, so I'm going to be in on the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 3 here with Texas Tech. 651, 652 on the card. Utah is on the road against Kansas State. Kansas State is a favorite here of 8 to 8.5 points. 169.5 to 170.5 is the total. It's at a total of 172.5. I do like the over. You got a Utah team that's looking to play relatively fast in terms of total possessions per game. This team is 78th in all of college basketball. Kansas State is even faster. This Kansas State team has risen up to being now 16th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. It's a Kansas State team that has actually been relatively okay in terms of perimeter defense. Right now, they're allowing teams to shoot only about 32.2% from three, but in a road/neutral court venue, that's 27.7%. At home, that's 35.7%. So go figure there. It's a Utah team, though, that they're going to allow a lot of good looks from three as well, outside the top 165. With that regard, Utah's just well outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. You do have Keno Dallas, who's been able to do a nice job down low, 12.5 points, 9 rebounds per game, but he and James Okonkwo, who gives you only 2.5 points with his 5.6 rebounds per game, one two guys that give you over 3.6 rebounds per game. So against the State team that's been getting bludgeoned on the glass, that's a little bit less of a worry. Now for Utah, you've been able to have Terrence Brown really step up, 21.5 points per contest, low to mid-30s, three-point shooter. They were having Jacob Patrick shooting really well from three, but now he's out of the fold, and it's been a lot of mix and match outside of what you've been able to get out of Don McHenry to help out Terrence Brown. He's been able to get the team 16.5 points per contest, but for Kansas State, one of the top players in all of college basketball is PJ Haggerty. He's been able to supply 5 boards, 4.5 assists, a steal, 23 points on 37.5% three-point shooting, and it's a Kansas State team that's been a little bit wobbly recently with their three-point shooting, but they're still shooting about 36.8% from three-point range. That is still a top 45 mark in all of college basketball in their home games. Again, they've got some strange home and road splits. That goes down to 35.7% from three, but that should iron out with the bad defense that you've got for this Utah team. Additionally, you've got Abdi Bashir shooting 44% from three, 13 points per contest. David Castillo, Nate Johnson, they both gave 11.3 points per game. Haggerty's a lone guy that gives you over 5 rebounds per game, but with the way that Utah just does not do a really good job in terms of executing on offense from the outside, the way that they have been so ghastly on defense, I think that you get an up and down game, and I do think that Kansas State finds a way to be able to get the job done in this ordeal. I did set my line at 10.5. I'm willing to lay it, and I'm in on the over, so I total 172.5, 653, 654. Michigan State, they are on the road against Oregon. Oregon is a home underdog here of 10.5 points, 140 to 140.5 is the total. I did set my line at 8.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points. Now, Michigan State, absolutely supreme with their defensive rebounding. Teams are only grabbing 18.5% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That is numero uno in all of college basketball. Michigan State slowing things down. They're about 260th in terms of total possessions per game in games played away from home. Number 1 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And Oregon's not really cranking up tempo. 218th in terms of total possessions per game. Their main kryptonite has been the turnovers. 258th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. But the one thing that Michigan State doesn't really do on defense is generate turnovers. About 205th in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Now they execute well on offense with Jeremy Fears, give you about 8.5 assists, 13 points per contest. And overall for the season, Michigan State shoots 35.3% from three. That's like 32 to 33% at home and over 40% away from home. I think that irons out a little bit. Jackson Kaler, 48% three-point shooter, 13.5 points, 10 rebounds per contest. Carson Cooper has been able to give you about 7 boards per contest. This team is going to ruck shop down low because you no longer have Nate Biddle in the fold for Oregon, and Jackson Shell said he's dealing with injury. His season actually might be done, but he still do have 2 double-figure scorers that you're able to rely upon. TK Simpkins along with Kawan on Evans. These two guys combined for 26 points per contest. Between the two of them, shooting about 35.5% from three-point range. Evans is able to give you 7.5 rebounds. He's a former top 25 recruit, so very highly touted guy. They need John Stewart to continue to step up. Only he's been able to give you about 7.6 rebounds per game. Bit of a disappointment coming in from Ohio State, but came up big in that Michigan game. 22 points, 8 rebounds. Maybe he's finally inspired or something like that, because he's been a little bit of a disappointment for this team. And then you got Zarek Lindsey, who's been able to give you about 5 points, 3 rebounds per game. I think that this is going to be a sloppy game. Oregon, I don't think is going to get a lot going on offense. I think that they need to slow things down without having in the fold both Shellset along with Biddle, but they held in there against Michigan. They lose that game by 10. I think that they can make this a sloppy game and hold in there against a Michigan State team that really doesn't run away with teams because their offense can be a little bit hit or miss themselves. So I did set my line at 8.5. I'm going to take the points with Oregon, and I'm in on the under. So my total 134.5, 655, 656 on the card. Vanderbilt, they are going to be on the road against Arkansas. Arkansas finds themselves as a slim 1.5 to 2 point favorite. 172.5 to 173 is the total. Set a total of a 170.5. I'm in on the under now. You got two teams that are just blasting off with their offense. How about Vanderbilt? 26th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Arkansas, they are 36th in the country, and these are two top 25 teams in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and two teams that shoot it quite well from three-point range. Vanderbilt, 40th in the country. They're shooting 36.8% from three. That actually goes up to 39.2% when they're away from home. Meanwhile, you've got an Arkansas team that's 18th. They shoot 40.5% from three-point range at home. But you've also got an Arkansas team that, if they've done one thing okay on defense, and it's not necessarily the world's greatest Arkansas defense in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, this is a team that checks in about 133rd in all of college basketball. They're not the worst team in terms of their three-point shooting defense. They're not a team that's going to generate a lot of turnovers. You're built around Darius Acuff, giving you about 20 points per contest. Here, Malik Thomas shoot a combined about 40% for three. Thomas gives you 16 to 17 points per contest. But at home, Arkansas allows teams to only shoot 30% from three-point range. Vanderbilt, for as good as the offense is, they're actually 11th in the country in opponent's three-point shooting percentage. Teams in a road or neutral court venue only shoot 29.9% from three-point range against them, and Vanderbilt has been hurt a little bit by the injury that they sustained to Frankie Collins. Ever since then, they've taken back-to-back losses. I do think that this could be a little bit of a bounce-back spot, though. I did set Arkansas as a 2.5 point favorite, but Tyler Tanner along Duke Miles, they combine for 5.2 steals per contest. They both give you 17.3 to 17.4 points per contest. Tanner shoots 40% per three, 35.5% for Miles, and then Tyler Nickel, 47% three-point shooter, 14.5 points per game. If you find yourself in a pressure spot, Vanderbilt, they're a top 35 team with their free throw shooting percentage at 76.9%, but this is also a Vanderbilt team that can be a little bit vulnerable on the inside. They don't grab a lot of second and third chances outside the top 100 in terms of opponent's two-point shooting percentage, despite the fact that you've got Devin McLaughlin along with Jalen Washington combining for about 12 rebounds per game. And Arkansas is a nice, versatile big man of their own. That would be Mr. Trayvon Brazil, about 13.6 half board, shoots 40% from three-point range. And then Malik Ewan gives you a block, 5 rebounds per game. I do think that Bud Walton Arena is still an incredible home court environment. It's an Arkansas team that has been a top 35 team in terms of taking care of the ball. I think that they do just enough to be able to get the job done. And I do think that both of these teams go a little bit colder from three-point range. So semi-total 170.5. I like the under, and with Arkansas, I'm willing to lay up to a deuce with them. 657, 658. It's Air Force on the road against Colorado State. Colorado State, very sizable favorites here of 20.5 points. 132 to 133.5 is the total. And I said Air Force as a 22-point underdog. I'm going to be willing to lay it. Things are just not good for this Air Force team, to say the least. Their coach in Joe Scott is under suspension, which is probably not a bad thing for the team. First game without him, they lose to Nevada 81 to 66, which I believe was a cover for them. So yay, verily there. It's an Air Force team that's just deplorable with their offense. They're outside the top 3 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're outside the top 3 in terms of total possessions per game, and yet they turn the ball over 14.8 times per game, all while shooting 30.6% from three. Not good. Really not good, and they're getting blasted on the glass. They're outside the top 340 in terms of their offensive rebound percentage. Now, you do have a trio of guys, Lucas Hoblin, Caleb Walker, Cam Sanders, that'll give between 11.7 to 12 points per contest, but you just don't have much of a rotation. And 7-footer Wesley Cholkowski continues to give you 2.4 rebounds per game as a starter. How are you, a 7-foot starter, getting less than 2.5 rebounds per game? The world will never know. And for Colorado State, they were dealing with an injury to their top scorer in Kyle Jorgensen. Now they've got him back in the fold as as you've got essentially a quartet of guys. Gary Booth, Brandon Retzsteiner, Jorgensen, and Josh Passarelli, all between 11.5 and 13 points per contest, all shoot at least 43.1% from three. Colorado State is outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but neither team is pushing tempo whatsoever. Air Force 312th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Colorado State 364th in the country, but Colorado State top 25 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. This is a Colorado State team that they're going to give you some open looks from three-point range right now. There are a lot of teams that shoot right around about 35.4% from three-point range, but I just don't think that Air Force is going to be able to knock them down. You've got a Colorado State team that has been able to do a nice job in terms of just being able to keep things clean down low as well. Top 50 team in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage. Evan Mooney's as a little bit of point forward, 9 points, 4.5 boards, 4.5 assists. He's been rock solid, and I think that Air Force just continues to be sad and pathetic. I set my line at a 22. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Semi total at a 132.5. I don't think that Air Force does repart with this total, so in on the under, and I'm willing to lay with Colorado State. 659, 660. You've got Georgia on the road against Missouri. Missouri, it's a home underdog of 1.5 points, 164.5 to 165.5 is the total. Semi line at 3 with Georgia being the favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay with Georgia. Georgia just continues to be a really good team in terms of generating turnovers, top 40 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and they're really good at guarding the perimeter. Overall, 61st in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. You look at them in a road/huge score venue that goes into the top 50 with teams only shooting about 30.7% from three. Now, Georgia's had a little bit of kryptonite in terms of their own 3-point shooting, as overall for the season they shoot 32.2% from three, hovering right around about 250th in the country there. That's got up to about 33.6% here in conference play, and the big reason why is Jeremiah Wilkerson has come in from Cal, 17.9 points per contest, shoots 37% from three-point, and now Marcus Millender shooting 39% from three, so he's firing on all cylinders, 11.5 points per game. It is a Georgia team that is going to lose for some second and third chances outside the top 150 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, but for this Missouri team, they've been a little bit sloppy with the ball, and I think that that's going to be costly for them. It is a Missouri team that has still been a top 55 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and for this Missouri bunch, they just don't guard the three-point line. They are 294th in the country with teams shooting 36.1% from three. They've actually dialed it back a little bit with their tempo as well, 210th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Georgia has not dialed it back one bit. They're number one in the country in terms of total possessions per game, so they are very much going to be looking to run it and gun it, while this Missouri team, they're about 115th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, they do get back Jaden Stone, and that's been big for them when he's been out there on the floor, 15 points, 5 boards, 2.5 assists from three-point. He's popping it at about 43% clip from three, and then you've got Mark Mitchell, who's been the main concept for the team, 17 points, 5 boards, 3 assists, doesn't really fire from three, but then you've got Jacob Cruz shooting 47% from three-point. You've had Anthony Robinson chipping their 10.5 points, 4 assists, at fewer than 2 turnovers per game, and for Missouri, they in past years have been absolutely terrible on the glass. They now find themselves in the top 110 in terms of their overall rebound percentage, and a top 50 team in terms of both their own 2-point shooting percentage and opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but Georgia's starting to heat up from three. With the way that Georgia is able to generate turnovers, I think that you get it up and down game that the Bulldogs pull out. So my total 169, I'm in on the over, and with Georgia, I'm willing to lay up to 2.5 with them. 661, 662. It is Purdue on the road against UCLA. UCLA 5.5 to 6.0 underdogs, 146.5 to 147.5 is the total. So Purdue is a 5.5 point favorite at 6+. I'm going to be willing to take those points. You've got a pair of teams that are not really going to be looking to push a ton of tempo, with Purdue 288th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, UCLA 283rd, and for UCLA, defense isn't quite what it's been in the past. 80th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. That said, they have been giving up 23.2 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road/huge score venue, and it's a Purdue team that has actually stepped up to the plate with their defense away from home. Overall, 55th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but if you look at what they've been able to do away from home, that goes to number 13. Much of it is because they're not allowing a lot of second and third chances. You've got Trey Kaufman-Renn along with Oscar Clough down low. Clough, he's been able to give you about 12 points, 8.2 rebounds per game. Kaufman-Renn darn near a double-double, 12.7 points, 9 boards per contest, and with being able to have Daniel Jacobson give you some shot blocking with 2 blocks per contest, that makes them rock solid there. And then in the backcourt, veteran backcourt, you've got Fletcher Loyer, Braden Smith, a combined 28 points per contest. Between the two of them, they shoot 40% from three. Smith, 9.4 assists at 3 turnovers per contest. It's a Purdue team that is in the top 5 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, you've got a UCLA team that's still solid at generating turnovers. It's not necessarily what they have been in the past, but this is a team that is clocking in the top 55 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and what UCLA has really been able to do a good job of is being able to fire it away from three-point range. Right now, they're about 38th 6.8% from three-point range. That's the top 50 mark in all of college basketball. Overall, this team is 62nd in the country in terms of points per possession. They're not really going to grab for themselves a lot of second and third chances, but it is a unit that at home they shoot 37.7% from three, with having your main guy be able to step up in a big way, and Tyler Bilodeau with about 18.5 points, shoots 43.5% from three. Sky Clark still shooting 48.5% from three-point range. He's been dealing with a little bit of injury, though, going to be out of the fold most likely in this game once again, but that said, even though Donovan Dent doesn't really replace the three-point shooting, 12.5 points, 6.5 assists, so about 2.3 turnovers per game, keeps the ball nice and clean, and then you've got another pair of 40% three-point shooters in Trent Perry along Xavier Booker that I think do just enough for UCLA to remain lively in a game that I think is going to be relatively slow and controlled. Set my line at 5.5. We'll take 6+ here with UCLA. Made a total of 145.5, so I'm also in on the under 663, 664. Old San Jose State is on the road against Nevada. Nevada 17.5 to 18.5 point favorite. Set on this game is 142.5. Give me the points with San Jose. I set San Jose State as a 12.5 point underdog. I'm going to be willing to take the points. It has been a rough year for San Jose State on defense. They are outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, despite the fact that they play quite slowly, 330th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. You've got a Nevada group that's not really looking to push a lot of tempo themselves, 306th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but I did set a total here of a 148.5. I'm in on the over. Now for Nevada, not a team that's necessarily going to go in flamethrower mode from three-point range at home, because if you look at their home and road splits, Nevada overall 20th in the country in terms of their three-point shooting percentage. They shoot 38.2%, 34.4% at home, 43.4% away from home. It's just really inexplainable right now. And San Jose State, 101st in terms of their three-point shooting percentage. They shoot about 35.3% from three-point range. Main man that's been able to help this team out. He's come over from the Big South. He's been able to supply about 19 points per contest in Kobe Garland. He's been rock solid, being able to shoot about 35% from three, but they've been dealing with an injury for him the last few games. He's probably going to be out of the fold once again. They've been dealing with an injury to Yafat Mundi, their top rebounder, with about 7.5 rebounds per game. So it's been mix and match, but I like what I've seen out of Ben Rosenberg along with Jermaine Washington. These two guys combined for about 23 points per game, and between the two of them, shoot about 39% from three-point range. You've had Adrian Myers come off of injury. He's been able to give the team 8.5 points per game. He began his career over at Mississippi State, double figures in each of the last two games. He, from three-point range, shoots about 36% from three. So the San Jose State team, with all the injuries, they've become a little bit more of an offense-oriented team, and defense has just continued to decline. Meanwhile, you've got a Nevada team that does a really good job in terms of taking care of the ball. Top 30 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. You've got Corey Camper, Tayshaun Comer in the backcourt, who combined for about 30 points per contest. Camper shoots 43% from three, 35.5% out of Comer. It is a Nevada team, though, that they themselves are outside the top 230 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, outside the top 175 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. That said, this is a unit that they are just really not good at executing on the inside. They are outside the top 300 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, and for as bad as San Jose State has been really across the board with their defense, their really worst kryptonite has been they have been absolutely awful at guarding inside, and I think that that's going to keep them halfway lively in this game. I do think that both of these teams execute well on offense. Joel Armatrane's still been dealing with an injury for Nevada down low. You've been able to have Elijah Price be able to give you about 8.5 rebounds per game, but he's pretty much the lone healthy guy on this roster that's giving you over 4.1 rebounds per game. Should get a lot of clean possessions in this game, and I think that San Jose State, with the way that the ancillary guys have been able to pop it and lock it from three, they remain lively. So set my line at 12.5. I'm willing to take the points here with San Jose State, and I'm going to be in on this total over as well. 665, 666. You've got Kansas on the road against Colorado. Colorado is a home underdog of 4.5 to 5.5 points. 155.5 to 156.5 is the total. I set my line here at a 151.5. I'm going to be in on the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 5 with Kansas. I know this is a dangerous game fading Colorado at home, as this has been a Colorado team that has been able to do a nice job in terms of hitting their threes. For Colorado, just overall a good offensive team. They shoot 36.7% from three at home. Overall, they're 89th in the country, shooting about 35.5% from three, top 100 team. With regards to their two-point shooting percentage, in terms of just raw points scored on a per possession basis, this team is 53rd in the country. They really don't turn the ball over a lot. And for this Kansas defense, it's very interesting because they're right now a top 30 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, despite being well outside the top 330 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. But what they do a great job of locking down from three-point range. They allow opponents to shoot 27.7% from three-point range in a roadside shoot score venue. That is a top 10 mark in all of college basketball. Then you've got Flory Badunga down low, who's been able to give you over a block and a half per contest. He has been an absolute menace, being able to supply about 14 points, 9 rebounds per game. Trey White, good versatility out of him. A steal, 15 points, 7 boards. He shoots 42.5% from 3. And then Mr. Peterson, great name, Darren Peterson, 22 points. He's now shooting 40% from 3-point range. So I have to love what those guys have been able to bring to the table. Marco Jackson has been a little bit of a disappointment on offense, and it is a Kansas team that's outside the top 90 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They don't grab for themselves a lot of second and third chances. So I do think that's going to be a little bit of a make it and take it sort of game with Kansas. Just say you're outside the top 200 in terms of total possessions per game. Colorado, they're looking to play fast. They're not necessarily warp speed fast, 108th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And for Colorado, you still have Barrington Argus shooting over 50% for 3. It's ridiculous. 13.5 points, 4.5 assists. He shoots 53% for 3. Isaiah Johnson, 44% 3-point shooter, 16 points per game. It's a team that does a great job hitting their free throws. They're a top 30 team with their 77.8% free throw shooting percentage, and they're a top 75 team in terms of getting to the free throw line as well. Bengu Doc has been able to give you about 11.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game as well. So these guys have been able to do a great job in tandem, but I really think that Kansas is really starting to find their swagger with regards to their defense. They've been able to do such a rock solid job there, and I do think that they're going to be able to slow this game down a little bit. Semi-total of 151.5. I like the under, and with Kansas, I'm going to lay up to 5 with them, and wrap things up with 667, 668. UNLV is going to be on the road against Utah State. Utah State, a 16.5 to a 17.5 point favorite. 156.5 is the total. Maybe my total 161.5. I do like the over. You've got a UNLV team that's about 177th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but they're gunning it. 51st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Utah State, a little bit more of a mid-tempo team at about 215th in terms of total possessions per game, but a flamethrower on offense. 23rd in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Now, the defense has been really good as well. They're a top 50 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, top 15 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Really, the lone vulnerability for this team is that they're 132nd in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, and UNLV has not been great with their 3-point shooting percentage. This is a UNLV team as well outside the top 335 right now in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage. I do think that there's going to be a little bit of improvement moving forward for UNLV. UNLV has been able to have Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn do a nice job stepping up. He's been able to give the team 15 plus points per contest, and they've been able to get a little bit more production ever since Emmanuel Stevens, the true 7-footer, has gone back into the fold as well. He's been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game. Not necessarily a offensive weapon by any stretch of the imagination, but Kamani Hamilton, Tyron Jones, Howie Fleming, they all give you between 10 and 12.5 points per contest. All give you at least 4.6 rebounds per game as well. For UNLV team, that has been a top 150 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, and UNLV top 150 team in terms of executing down low. They're a top 50 team in terms of getting to the free throw line, albeit they shoot 67.5% at the free throw line. That's a big reason why I'm willing to lay with Utah State. With Utah State, I did set them as a 19.5 point favorite, and this is a UNLV team that's getting absolutely cooked with regards to their defense. They're well outside the top 150 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and for UNLV, to their credit, they've been a top 100 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but with this Utah State team, they do just such a good job executing on offense. They have a guy in MJ Collins who's able to give you 19.5 points, shoots 44% from 3-point range. Kobe King has been the king of shooting 44% from 3, 8.5 points per game. Mason Fosla, 16.5 points, 2.5 steals, 6.5 rebounds per game. Gary Clark is able to give you 6 rebounds per game. It's a Utah State team that's also a top 125 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, and they're really doing a good job in terms of their interior play, both on offense and on defense, being a top 40 team in terms of both opponents' 2-point shooting percentage and being a top 25 team with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage. You're going to get plenty of possessions in this game with the way that UNLV looks to gun it, and I think that Utah State takes full advantage, gets points up on the board, and gets the job done. Set my line at 19.5. We'll delay with Utah State, and I'm in on the over, and that'll wrap things up for the Tuesday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. A big thanks to Ryan McIntyre of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network for joining me in the last segment. If you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, the mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, and I'm with you guys every single day. You fix it analysis on every game every day, so I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.